Welcome to What If I Don't Like It? I'm your host, KT Baldessaro, and this episode we'll be chatting with musician, artist, and good friend of the show, Conan Neutron, about his number one film of all time, the 1976 comedy drama, Network. Welcome to episode 16. I'm going to keep the intro pretty short because we've got a very good friend of mine and the show, Conan Neutron, on to talk about his number one favorite film of all time. And so that's going to require a lot of our talking time, and I don't want to waste too much of it at the top right here going over, just the kind of like plugs and intro stuff that we're going to go into in the show anyway. I want to take a quick second to point out a segment that we have that you might not know about because it's well within the back end of the show, and maybe you don't listen to the entire show, or maybe you haven't listened to the entire show because some of them are pretty long. This one is definitely going to be longer because, again, Conan and I had a lot to talk about and a very important film to talk about as well. That segment is Corrections and Omissions, although I'm going to retitle it today as Corrections, Omissions, and Deeper Dives. That's where we kind of nerd out on facts. I use the royal we, where I nerd out on facts about the film, things that might have been misquoted or stuff like that. So if you're ever listening to the show and you're like, Jesus, that was wrong, I probably correct that in the back end of the show. This one is really interesting. I do a lot of deeper dives about Oscar facts and trivia. So if you want to catch that, you can kind of fast forward to about 2 hours, 45 minutes into this particular one to catch it. It's usually within the back 30 minutes of the show, and I would love if you check that out this time. Trivia is really fun. This episode is a switcheroo. It's another one of those where I haven't seen the movie, but the guest has because they've come on and done one where they've watched a movie for me already. Scott did that with Ice Pirates. Ariel did that with The Emperor's New Groove. And now we have Conan, and he's doing Network. We'll talk about really why I haven't seen Network when we get into part one. I just want to throw those, common plugs at the top of the show at you so we can get through this, get right on in there. Of course, Conan is a musician of the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. You can find out more about him, how to get involved with his music, buy albums, buy singles, get cool t-shirts, by going to the liner notes, clicking on Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. He also hosts a podcast, Protonic Reversal. Protonic Reversal is a live stream discussion interview talk show that is podcasted, a conversation of amusing anecdotes, rocker ennui, why people do what they do, and other assorted hijinks. It's like Inside the Rocker Studio, or something similar to that. That's live Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific. He is a host on Movie Night Extravaganza, for which I am often a guest on. You'll hear me talk about that. That's how I know Conan. It's how we met. If you don't know what Movie Night Extravaganza is, it's an irreverent, quick-moving show about movies. Although it ostensibly comes from the world of progressive podcasting, the end goal is really to discuss, debate, and otherwise speak out about as many different kinds of movies as possible. That's live Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific, although sometimes they do a surprise Friday live episode, same starting time. That is going to be relevant because I'm going to be on there again on the 2nd of August. It'll be a Friday because we're going to be joined by Renee, who's out in Australia, so she's going to be there very early in the morning for her, very late for us. And we're going to talk about all 3 of the Lord of the Rings trilogies. I'm so excited. Earlier that week, on that previous Tuesday, they're going to have someone who worked at Weta Studios talking about the special effects on the trilogy. So they're going to look at the movies from a technical standpoint. Then on Friday, they're going to bring Renee and I in, and we're going to talk about the movies from a narrative standpoint, kind of more of your audience goer's experience. I am so excited about that one. You can always support Conan by going to his Patreon. Very good, very easy thing to do. It's only $1, and you get a lot of great content for that $1. Link is going to be in the liner notes, along with finding him on Instagram, finding him on Twitter, Letterboxd, and TikTok. Follow him on TikTok. He's new to this platform, and he doesn't really like it, so annoy him by using it. But you really, really, really should be following him on Letterboxd. He does some of the most thoughtful Letterboxd reviews that I have ever read. If I genuinely want to know whether or not I like a movie or the credibility of a movie, I will go to Letterboxd specifically to see if Conan has seen it already. I can't tell you how wonderful that is to be able to just know very quickly if something is total trash. Because he won't pull any punches and he will legitimately tell you about a movie from all kinds of angles, and I so appreciate that. Yes, he is a musician. Musicians are full-rounded artists. He is such a cinephile, and he has such great standpoints, which is why it is so exciting for me to bring him on here to talk about his number one favorite movie. And it is also so almost embarrassing that I never really stopped to look at Network and think about Network and consider that Network could be the number one favorite movie for someone who has literally seen more movies than you could humanly think exists and spends a lot of time thinking about them. Of course, I will also be on The Letter Hack with Matt Strackben. Now, a lot of people from Movie Night Extravaganza go on The Letter Hack. Drew a picture of Matt because I was practicing drawing digital drawings lately, and he invited me to come on his show so that he can draw a drawing of me. If you are unfamiliar with what Letter Hack is, it is an interview show focused on alternatives to mainstream media, art, and comics. There is a live drawing, like I said, during the session in which Matt draws you while he's interviewing you. It's not just enough that he's interviewing you, he also has the wherewithal and acumen to chat you up at the same time. It's a really, really fun thing, really fun idea. I will be on Monday, the 15th of this month at 9:30 p.m., and that's going to be live. Of course, you can always see it archived if you missed that. I'm doing yet another podcast this month. I will be on an upcoming episode of Backlook Cinema with Zoe Richardson to discuss RoboCop, which will be available on the 22nd of this month, July, wherever you get podcasts, and of course on their website, which will be in the liner notes. Oh man, what an honor to get to discuss such a fantastic film. I love it so much I got caught up in RoboCop the documentary, RoboDoc, by Eastwood Allen. There's so much to discuss in this movie. I mean, I think that's a 4-part series, like 4 extra hours just talking about the making of it, let alone how you feel about it. So this should be a really exciting and big endeavor. If you're not familiar with Backlook Cinema, it's a podcast that invites you to revisit the cinematic treasures of yesteryear from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Join them every other week as your host Zoe Richardson welcomes a special guest, this one will be me, to share their cherished memories of some of the greatest movies in history and delve into the legendary Hollywood lore that unfolded behind the camera. You can still see my 5-minute short film, the newest film that I have made, We Have Ghosts at Home. This is my first try at comedy, and it's a real quick one. It's not the big, long, drawn-out 35-minute horror film, Girl in the Basement, which you can also see. Those are really easy. If you go to Movie Runtime on YouTube, you will find those films. If you find me on TikTok at Movie Runtime, if you find me on Letterboxd at Movie Runtime, you will be able to find all of this. It's in my link tree. Although if you're on Instagram, it's going to be Little Deadly Creature. But, you know, I'm not going to change that. I really like that username. I'm going to stick with it there. You can find all of the stuff in those link trees, though, and as well as in the liner notes. Even though I said it wasn't going to take very long, I feel like this still took pretty long. Anyway, I'm not going to take any longer. Here we go, right into part 1.
KT, welcome to your show.
Thank you. Exactly. Welcome to episode 16.
Flipping the tables.
Flipping
the tables around. You, in fact, are in the hot seat now.
I know. And it's kind of funny because I really feel like I have vastly misunderstood this movie, because when I saw that it was in your top 4, I didn't look any further into it. I just went, oh God, I think this might be another Glengarry Glen Ross.
Right. Which, all right. So do you want to start with that, or should I do the other stuff?
All right.
First?
So we'll just tease slightly what is happening here with everyone. That was a mini tease, but we're going to start with, as we always do, talking to our guest about what's going on with them in their life right now. Cool stuff that's happening. And, let's start there. What's happening with you, Conan?
So Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, my band, just did a big tour with decently big tour. I mean, with Part Chimp from the UK, and that was great. Predominantly Midwestern dates. And then we played Caterwaul, which is the 4-day music festival that I throw in Minneapolis. That was also excellent. And then I also jumped on the band Dead from Australia. I jumped on the last leg of their tour and played guitar with them, and then we recorded a collaborative EP that may actually be an LP at this point. I don't even know. Like, it seemed like it was a good amount of material. It was more than I expected. That is still in the process of being worked on, probably be finished in the fall. And Conan Neutron, the Secret Friends, the new record, The Way of the Neutron, is done. Just needs to be mastered. I don't know if it's going to be out in the fall or the spring at this point. We'll see. It could kind of go either way. Mm-hmm. And then I have fall dates for sure, West Coast and hopefully East Coast dates coming up. And then we're also playing a huge show in Detroit with the God Bullies for their record release, which should be a big deal. So there's a bunch of stuff that's coming. neutronfriends.bandcamp.com is the best way to find all the music. There's kind of an odds and sods sale of like leftover t-shirt designs and things along those lines. We're out of almost everything, so we probably don't have your size, but if we do, you can pick up something along those lines. Records always available. And then Protonic Reversal, my podcast, is backing up and operating, just celebrated the 10-year anniversary since last we talked.
Congrats.
That was a huge episode. Yeah, 10 years for a podcast is a long time.
I know.
It's a long time. And, it does the thing that it does. So if that's the thing that you want it, then it is there for you. And if it's not, it will still be there. And let's see. Oh, I have a show I do with Jason Miles from This Is Revolution. It's under the This Is Revolution Pop Life banner, which is there. We're not talking about politics. This is about pop culture or music or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we just go through each year of, not each year, but a bunch of we pick a year and go over the records that came out that year. Oh, and he tags it because it's the internet with was blank the best year in music, which of course just means everyone is incited to give their opinion, which I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in anyone else's opinion that's out on the show. I don't care about that. But like, it gets clicks, but it's a avenue to speak extemporaneously about great records that came out that year and talk about the esoteria and stuff with that that I would do for free anyway. Like, I don't ever need to research it because this is like my life. So it's like it's the one of the only things. I don't produce it. I show up and just like do the thing, and it's great. And I would love if there was a name for it specifically. But we haven't been able to think of anything good. Yeah. And so if anybody on this show has an idea, get in touch. I'm at Conan Neutron on pretty much everything.
Yes, absolutely. Reach out. Let us know. That's also a really good skill to have because I go to a lot of trivia nights and I can't tell you the number one thing that I fuck up is what year did this song come out? Did this come out?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's not when was it popular, it's when did it come out?
When it come out, because it's not always the same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. That's a very good point. And that comes from just like, I used to work at a record store years and years ago, and I wrote for zines and stuff. And this is before I even like played music. That like I'm just like that place of my brain, like that and like movie stuff is basically where people have sports that are like normal people.
Yes,
I think.
Yes,
because I don't know from it. I don't care about sports. Like I'm not interested in it. Like it's people get something out of it. Great. I don't want to hear about it. But like I get it. You probably don't want to hear about the fall discography. I understand. Like I absolutely. Do you want to hear about the Decalogue? Not really. Probably. But and then also I should mention Moving Extravaganza, which of course how we know each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
The most the rowdy, irreverent, but also informed movie show on the internet. Hands down, bar none.
It's the most hangout show I've ever been part of or ever really seen, where it's literally like if you're feeling kind of lonely and you want that experience of hanging out with people talking about something that you may have seen or may have not seen, it's that vibe 1000.
Yet it also comes from an informed place. Like it isn't just people. So what did you watch? Oh, I watched this. Cool. Maybe. So what did you watch?
Maybe because I hang out with a lot of like spectrum-y people. Everyone's always like, I watched this, and here are 10 other facts about it, because after I watched it, I Googled it to hell.
Right. And that's fine. That's just a different format. I mean, it's more of a deep dive. Forrest does those really long intros.
Yeah.
That are very cool. I try to bring in a certain sensibility into the show that kind of takes into the larger film canon of moviedom, stuff like that.
You brought in a very cool thing to the show that I know has been stolen multiple times, but I want to give credit where credit is due. At least here on this show, people will know Letterboxd one-liners started with you.
Literally me. Like, and like, I you're right. There's like at least 4 or 5 shows, including Letterboxd itself, that has now taken the bit without attribution. And it's like, okay, you can't copyright a bit, but I was definitely doing it first, and like, not to be a jerk, but I feel like there is an art to it. I think, as someone who's filled in on the show and had to do it.
It is hard.
It is not easy. It is not. It's easy to do a hack, terrible version of it, but it's not easy.
And it's a long, thankless job, because you are not making comedy. You're curating comedy from the masses.
Which is like a special circle of hell. Because people trying to be funny is one of the worst things in the world. And that is unfortunately what most people are trying to do on Letterboxd. Now, what I find interesting is that some of the funniest ones is just random people just saying something that is actually just funny.
Oh, yeah.
So, but when other people do it, they usually just like pick like the most popular reviews that like are in that format. I'm like, that isn't how that bit should be. It's how they do the bit. It's not how I do the bit. It's actually kind of rare for it to be a popular one, because they're usually doing something obvious, and it's usually only popular because they're a popular account. Being popular doesn't mean what you have to say is interesting.
And I'm going to have seen that myself already when looking on Letterboxd for this movie. Find me the gem comment from user 75 that I didn't see because I don't follow them. Although, fuck it, when I had to do it for filling in for you, one of the ones I had to do was The Wailing, a Korean horror movie. Ooh, that was hard to find funny comments about.
And some, not the ones you would think, are just hard to find anything funny at all. Sometimes maybe, that's interesting, or that's cool, but like, and then some movies that are uber serious, it's really easy to find funny stuff. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. And some of them, it's just like, oh my God, this is an avalanche of thirst posting. And you're like, I get it, you're horny. Oh my God.
Oh my God. God forbid.
Are you a prisoner? Are you locked up? Is that why you're this thirsty?
I know that you guys would never cover Saltburn. Or maybe did you cover Saltburn? No, okay, because that would be a 5th circle, like a full 9th circle of hell for you if you had to do the search for. You'd have to give it to Christina that week.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would farm it out. I'm like, not this time. It's too much.
They did a vinyl for the soundtrack, and they made it 2 pieces of plastic, and it's filled with bath water. Ugh. Talking about gimmicky reach for things. So many people are trying to grab that A24 je ne sais quoi about like merch.
Right.
Like,
here's the kinds of kindness keychain that's a thumb. All right,
whatever.
I mean, I didn't actually hate Saltburn. I honestly just didn't think it was worth all the discussion. And I say that as a huge fan of Promising Young Woman. I love that movie.
Which didn't get the discussion that Saltburn got. No. And I would rather discuss that film 1,000 times. So true.
It's like, see, here's the trap. Is like I almost just started discussing Saltburn.
See? I got you there. That was my little inception.
Anyway, I think those are my plugs, which is still shorter than when Andy does it on the show.
I can make it take longer if you'd like.
No, I really don't. I get enough of that.
Well, so we were segueing kind of nicely into the fact that you gave us Letterboxd one-liners, which
I gave the world Letterboxd one-liners.
Beautiful thing to have given us.
It's a gift from me to the world.
And we did it.
Hey, do you know what it was? Did I ever tell you how that came about?
No.
Oh. So I was the only Letterboxd user on the show for a really long time, and I was a relatively early-ish adopter.
You were the people who told me about Letterboxd, you and Jared.
And I was annoyed by, again, people trying to be funny. Not being funny, but trying to, practice their comedy on Letterboxd, where I'm like, I just want to know if this movie's any good or not. I'm not interested in you doing this. And it annoyed me so much that I was like, well, okay, I'm not going to be able to stop people from doing this as much as I would like to. But maybe I can find something interesting or funny about this. Like, the people actually are funny or interesting, or like in the context of a discussion would be a breaker from, I don't even remember what I did it for originally, but it was like, oh, here's a serious topic. Here's a way to kind of break that up. And then after that, you can kind of move towards the close of the show. Like, of just like, here's a thing that is a repeated bit that, you know, and then you do your final thoughts and the plugs or whatever along those lines. And I was thinking about in terms of that, because I'm always thinking about in terms of like show production, because I just kind of naturally go that way. Like, even when I'm a guest on shows, I'm like, you should be wrapping it up right now. You know, like, I always like will think those kinds of things, and I usually have to try hard not to articulate them. But it annoyed me. Like, and it annoyed me because it was like, there's so many people that are not funny trying to be funny. And I was like, but I bet there are people that are funny. And so I dug through and I was like, oh, this is really good. And like, this one's great. And it has 1 like, and it's me. Like, no one has seen this. No one has seen this. This is some user that's just like, you know, whatever. However they got there, they said something really deeply hilarious. Oh, wow. Wouldn't it be funny to like bring that onto the show? Yeah. And so, but it started with me like being annoyed by people that like are not even like giving substantial critiques of anything, or even saying if they liked it or not. They were just pointing out some like obsequious detail.
Yeah, there are so many accounts where, like, okay, every once in a while, I'll just throw something down that's like a 1-sentence review because the movie's like a 3-star mid-movie. But there are
what's there to say, right?
Yeah, you know, here it is. It was Jigsaw, fine. But there are so many accounts where I'm like, I have to almost ban you from, I want to block you because you say nothing. And it keeps winding up in my feed, and it is worse than not knowing anything.
Usually very popular accounts. Yeah. And by the way, I have about a dozen accounts that I blocked that I'm like, I just never, you say nothing of value and I never want to see it, so I'm blocking you. And I'm sure they're very nice people, maybe, but like, they are the people that like Letterboxd tries to show you and tries to entice you to follow when you first join. I'm like, no, I would think this was an altogether worse site if I was like following those people.
It's like when people try and be Monty Python's level of irreverent funny.
Oh my God.
It's the worst. It's like so anti-funny, and you can't bottle that kind of ingenuity that happens when you get a 1 kind of sentence thing for Letterboxd.
It's like when you're hanging out with a comedian and a friend of yours comes up and tries to do stand-up comedy at them. I'm like, what are you doing? Do not do that. Stop. Stop doing that. Why are you doing this?
Have you seen this in the news recently, Conan? They're talking about it. You're just like, Jesus Christ.
Oh my God. I wish my freaking eyes emitted laser beams.
Oh.
Yeah, and anyway, that's how the Letterboxd one, which is just like, this annoys me, but I can't stop it from happening. Therefore, I'm going to try to find some value and something cool about it.
You're going to catch people being good instead of looking at all the times they weren't funny. You're going to exalt all the times people were genuinely funny. Yeah, and
even accidentally. Just because it's like, because it has nothing with popularity. In fact, most of the best ones are like just not even popular at all. But like, there is something kind of wonderful about the open source democracy of it all.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And for the longest time, How Did This Get Made would read reviews on Amazon that were 5 stars that made no sense. And now they're starting to go on to Letterboxd and read funny one-liners instead. So you're getting really big shows that are like changing their format to switch over to this. Because you're right, it is, and they do it in the same place. They put it at the end as a just before the end kind of like format. And I find that is really helpful. Even when you have a hangout show, even when you're doing a looser format show, you do kind of need these touchstones to keep it from being.
Absolutely. And I would, first of all, I'll be waiting for my invite to be on that show. Thank you. But the least they could do. Actually, the least they could do is nothing.
There's nothing. And they're doing that now. But no, oh my God, I would drive to wherever and that's out in LA a lot too. I would go out to LA to see you on that show.
I am available. Whenever it is, I'm available.
I'll let them know.
Thank you. Yes, I can have my agent get in touch. but yeah, I mean, I also assume that it's something that like an idea that other people like just came to the same conclusion for the same sort of deals.
Yeah, that whole like cognitive concept of 2 people coming up with the same idea on opposite sides of the birth. We know that.
We were 100% doing it first, and
for 3 years almost.
For literal years, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so that's a lot about that. But I do think it's interesting. I don't think I've ever actually talked about that.
Oh.
I know that for a while when the Letterbox show itself started doing it, and a bunch of people kind of came to war about it on Twitter, like specifically calling out "led by Forrest." Let's be clear.
Something happened on Twitter, led by Forrest.
I know. Hard to believe, right? Well, he's off it now, but it felt good to be acknowledged. I'm like, cool, because like it is a good bit.
It is,
right,
yeah.
and it's like, and like I came up with it, but in the same way that like sometimes stuff just like you come up with something, and you know, like other people come up with it later on, and
oh my God,
a more famous thing gets credit for it. Okay, fine.
You
That's
know,
the way it is.
I think a lot of people, a great example of this is Jimmy Fallon gets credited with that lip syncing challenge when that is the basis of drag performance for decades.
Yeah, it's only new to you. It's not new.
Yeah, like exactly. That is in no way can you claim that was even spontaneously co-created.
Yeah.
But this brings me to a good segue for, we had you on the show for Moonstruck, and I was not yet doing the format where I asked my guests for their Letterboxd top 4, and particularly in this episode, it is relevant. So let's jump in. What are your Letterboxd top 4? I'm also allowing for a 5th honorable mention because it usually winds up squeaking in.
Yeah. So I've the only change I've ever made on my Letterboxd top 4 since when I started Letterboxd is I swapped out 4 and 5, which is that 5 right now is The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And I swapped in RoboCop as number 4.
Also good choice.
One of my favorites of all time, and again, as you know, because I was extolling the praises of RoboDoc recently.
Yeah, great.
And that is
both great.
One of the best documentary series about any movie I've ever seen ever.
I had a dream last night that director decided to do that level of documentary about Repo Man.
Holy shit.
Right?
I would be like super into that. Yeah,
right?
That sounds awesome. Well, isn't it crazy? Alex Cox has been trying to make a sequel to Repo Man for like 30 years, but he just can't get...
And he had that script Repo Chip.
And yeah, that's true. But he can't get the international rights is the reason why he won't do it. So he only has the US rights. So so sad. And he's like 70 or something, so we're probably not ever going to see that. But
love it though. Anyway.
But RoboCop, I mean, look, as far as like a sci-fi satire goes, you know, Verhoeven, like one of the best Verhoevens, and that's saying a lot. There's Verhoeven's, I think, very, very good, very consistent.
Yeah. Starship Troopers, also honorable mention.
Starship Troopers is great. I like Starship Troopers a lot. It's nowhere near my top 10 even. But RoboCop, there's something about RoboCop and the way it all comes together. Paul Weller's performance. I mean, we did it on the show. You know, I saw it at a friend's birthday party at a too young age. Like basically, and I was like, wow, this is like really violent. But it's a cool dystopian violent revenge tale, and then also like a satire of consumption, corporate excess, public sector privatization, and like basically Reagan era politics.
Yeah, it is so satirical. It is boggling how misunderstood it was. That anyone watched that film and took it at face value when it came out is gobsmacking.
Yeah, like Boston Mechanics being like, oh, we should make an Ed 209. No, you shouldn't do that. No. You should definitely not do that. That's a bad idea.
I have
wrong lessons, friend.
I bought my husband a t-shirt that says Shred 209, and it shows Ed 209 on a skateboard getting down the stairs.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's like,
I thought it'd be like Ed 209 somehow shredding guitar licks, but
also
Ed 209 has no hands, so that'd be really hard.
I just love that he figures out a way to get down the stairs. It's by shredding.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he finally got down the stairs.
It's true.
So Big Lebowski in the 5 slot. Do I need to say anything about Big Lebowski?
It's in my top 4, so you don't have to pitch it to me. It's amazing.
It's one of the best comedies of all time. One of the best
quotable
detective satires.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, we all know it's great. Not universally loved at the time.
I know, another great example. Repo Man, everything what we're saying right now, all of these films are misunderstood in their time. So I think about Starship Troopers when I think about RoboCop as like another film that just did not, from Verhoeven, that like just didn't get understood. Yeah. With the commercial breaks, like what were people thinking? That was obviously satire.
Yeah. What did you think this was? Yeah, and that's some of that might have to do with sensibilities changing and whatnot too. But also, yeah, one of the rare examples of the movie's better than the book too.
Oh yeah.
So RoboCop, The Player in the 3 slot.
I don't think I
the
know that one.
Robert Altman movie, Tim Robbins.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it, though.
He played. Oh my god! Obviously, it's one of my favorites. It's a very satirical version of Hollywood in the 1992, basically, and Tim Robbins is just absolutely fantastic as this producer that this soulless like movie producer with no moral compass of any kind, just in shitification personified within the 90s. But then you also get to see there's really like so first of all, there's a long shot that's actually in and of itself an homage to Touch of Evil that just shows people going through the studio and there's people like pitching different movies. Like you see you see what's the director of The Graduate, what's the or not the director, anyway, he's the Buck Henry. Buck Henry is pitching The Graduate 2. Now this is 92, you gotta understand, right? So this is like but it's just like you get to see everything going on a Hollywood lot in and of itself, an homage to Touch of Evil that people even talk about in Touch of Evil. Peter Gallagher's in it, and basically he gets he's getting death threats from what we think is a disgruntled writer that's like a true head, especially the focus on the bicycle thief is a big part of the plot. But it's a self-reflection on Hollywood and like just these industry idiosyncrasies. And my favorite thing, and I don't want to spoil things too much, Richard E. Grant plays he's great, and he plays this director, and he's pitching this movie that's just, very, very bleak indie film, right? And then the turnaround on that is pretty fantastic. But I'm a big Altman fan. I think Robert Altman should be revered the way that like a lot of people revere other directors, and justifiably. I think that what he did with Shortcuts is somehow attributed to Magnolia. It's like Magnolia was a Shortcuts ripoff. He even said that.
Yes, I think that's so funny how a lot of people are so on about Magnolia and don't know that other film.
Shortcuts is like, first of all, it's a better film. Secondly, like the entire format is ripped off from Shortcuts. And it's just his version of that, which I guess you could say was sort of just a more distilled version and plot-centric thing of what he did, like Nashville and stuff along those lines. But the point of fact is that Altman, incredible filmmaker. And I think the only one of his movies that's kind of rated accurately by modern audiences is The Long Goodbye, which of all the ones is like, why that one? But I mean, I like it, but it's like, whatever. I don't think it's even my top 5 of his.
That's kind of funny.
And it's crazy that, people give him credit for MASH. I'm like, yeah, MASH is cool, but like, hello, Nashville, and Shortcuts especially is just like kind of lost of time. So it's due for a resurgence, I think. But my favorite Robert Altman is The Player.
It's funny how people want to say like, well, you can't like this director because there are other directors that are more blah, blah, blah. And I don't think it's an either or. I think we should also just like this other director for their great stuff.
Yeah, it's fine.
Did Shortcuts have a really compelling soundtrack? I feel like that's one of the things that saved Magnolia, for as much as it is what it is. People were just like so in love with the particular soundtrack that came off.
Like the Amy Mann song.
Amy Mann. It was like everybody was like, oh, who's Amy Mann? I mean, well, she's been singing in Northampton for a while, but here she is.
It's pretty good. There's like a Michael Stipe song on there. There's like an Iggy Pop song. It's good. It's not like Until the End of the World good or anything along those lines. But,
it's not Repo Man good.
But he did, right, exactly. That's the gold standard.
Gold standard. Saved the whole damn movie.
But Altman did do the thing where he like asked musicians he liked to provide, like Elvis Costello's on it. Like, there's no standouts for it. It's good. It's a good soundtrack. It's awesome. But The Player, I mean, one of the things that like is like the inciting force with The Player is that the D'Onofrio character, he's been sending death threats because like his script was rejected. Right? And then the reason why is because he's this soulless everything wrong with Hollywood a la 1992. And it's so it somehow managed to be like a dark satire, kind of a mystery, crimes, noirish in a way. And it does all these things really well. And Tim Robbins is absolutely excellent in it.
He's a fantastic and underrated actor.
He is and Altman does this thing where he blends actors and actresses playing roles with their real selves as well, and integrates those with like some of them like having previous interactions with the Griffin Mill character, as it like it's done so well, and in a way that I don't even know if people can appreciate now, because I think like people are used to seeing that kind of thing on television, but at the time it just wasn't done. So it's like kind of like a love letter and like a scathing review of Hollywood at the same time.
Yes.
And it is it's amazing. It's one of my favorites of all time. Anytime people haven't seen it, I always get, oh cool, you should watch it for sure, because I
definitely have to watch it. This and Network. It's interesting though, maybe it didn't get to be as famous as it should be because of the scathing review of Hollywood. We talked about how that can happen to a particular film.
Look at May December. I mean, yeah, like look at how it does to like acting, right? And I think that has a lot to do with it, as far as it being like seen as a lesser work somehow, or just not something that is. So he did Shortcuts like the year after, but it was. I mean, like, look, one of the reasons I like him is like the same reason you like someone like Alex Cox. It's like, well, because he doesn't do the thing you should do. He doesn't play the game. It's great.
That's so refreshing.
I think so. So that's The Player. That's my number 3.
Okay.
Right. So
all right.
Brazil by Terry Gilliam in the 2 slot.
Love that film.
One of my favorites. One of my favorite depictions of Kafkaesque nightmares as well. Like,
I was going to say, if it wasn't for that film existing, one of my all-time favorite horror films wouldn't exist. And that's like one of my favorite little facts I found out this year, that the way that Brazil, it ends showing like, so Gilliam wanted to make a film that had a happy ending, but wasn't what audiences traditionally thought of as a happy ending. Like, sure, he's insane, but he seems to be okay with it. And like, what's the best way to live in this insane fucking world that we have, if not to go and, go a little mad yourself? And so because of that, The Descent, which is a British UK horror film from like the early aughts, has their main character not survive the horror, but
it's the creatures underground, right? The women that are spelunking.
Yeah.
That was a freaky movie. Yeah.
She dreams that she gets out in the end, and it's not actually what happens to her, but she's
happy
about it.
And you just see them kind of like closing in on it, and you're like, oh, well, she's fucked.
They had to edit it for American audiences. They cut it before it cuts back to the cave so that American audiences thought she got out.
Really? That sucks.
Blows.
That is the worst, because that was I was like, oh, snap. Like, that's messed up.
But that was the director being like, this was the best ending that could happen in this situation. It's actually kind of happy. Her whole family is dead. She doesn't have anything to go back to.
Yeah, what does she have to go back to? Nothing.
She's with them, right?
Right. So the thing with Brazil, and if you have the Criterion kind of mini box set like I do, you can actually watch all the cuts, and oh my god, is it a different movie, including the like they made a tacked on traditional happy ending. It makes no sense. It is. I watched it one time and I was like, I felt like endless vomit, not gif. Like, I was like, no.
That makes sense that would happen to that film too. I'm so glad they didn't have to do that.
I mean, I don't even know how do you even explain Brazil? Like, you get a low level bureaucrat who's just going through like monotonous day-to-day life, and he has like, daydreams of being like this heroic character and saving a beautiful damsel, right? And then there's like a wrongful arrest, right? I mean, Robert De Niro's in this movie, but it's like you're like, oh shit, that is Robert De Niro. And so it's just like a web of like lies and bureaucracy is what it comes down to.
Try and describe Time Bandit or Baron Munchausen,
it's Terry Gilliam.
Impossibly to describe. I made the mistake of telling someone to watch Brazil that I didn't realize was not suited to that kind of film at all. Yeah. And they came back and said, I didn't like it because it was so dystopian. So So I guess I would start with the word dystopian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that. Like, I love that stuff. A dystopian satire? Yes, please. That is my love language.
Sign
right?
me up.
Ooh,
The
yeah,
more
I am
sci-fi you
in.
make it, the better.
Say less. I'm in.
Exactly. So I do feel like Brazil is fantastic, and it's so visually pleasing too.
Oh, absolutely. It's got that Gilliam thing of just like, wow, this is a built world, right?
And you get a lead actor who is not traditionally lead because he is not gorgeous.
Yeah, it just looks like a dude. He just looks like a
dude.
person, like a regular person.
Love it, and really good at acting, so it holds it all together.
So that's my number 2 of all time. My number 1 is Network.
Is this one? So when I saw that it wasn't just on your letterbox, it was your number 1.
Number 1 with a bullet. And if you look at I made these top 100, top 100 of all time, top 250 of all time, and it's always number 1.
Always. It's always number 1 for probably the most cinephile friend of mine that I have not seen your number 1 and to think that I would hate it. I think this is a Glengarry Glen Ross, which is in my top
10, I think. It's either in my top 10 or top 20. I can't remember. But it is again. So, but it also goes back to the reasons why I love it. And I don't want to put my thumb on the scale. Is that it is another bleak satire. Right? I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. But in this case, it's media, right? And so that's like what. So let's do this. What do you know about Network?
And
what do you know about
a great place to start. So I think I'll come at it from the Glengarry Glen Ross point of view, which is that when you guys asked me to come on for Glengarry Glen Ross, I thought it was the Hudsucker Proxy.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
right. And then you guys were like, "No, it's not.
It really isn't.
It's not even close." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll guess." And then you're like, "It's Mammoth," and I was like, "I love Mammoth." So I put that on because I love State and Maine, and then I wound up hardcore loving that film. Fantastic.
Yes.
So I was like, okay. Maybe I'm just misunderstand things. And Network isn't quite that bad. I don't think that Network is another film. I know which film Network is. Network is the one where the guy goes out to the window and says, "I'm not going to take it anymore," right?
Yeah, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, I at least have that right.
Which is everybody knows like that scene, right?
Yes.
And that is an iconic scene for a reason. It got Peter Finch a Best Actor win. The Academy Award. It was actually, so it was nominated 10 times, including Best Picture.
Holy fuck.
And it won 4 of those nominations. One of which, unfortunately, Peter Finch died before the award ceremony.
Oh.
So it was the first posthumous Best Actor, or first Best Actor actress. The second of which is Heath Ledger.
Oh my God,
that's a fun piece of trivia.
That's good trivia.
That's good trivia, right?
Good.
Well, and Peter Finch wasn't even he was age 60. Like he wasn't even so. There's a long kind of thing that goes with that. But also, Faye Dunaway was nominated and won for Best Actress.
Oh wow! I didn't even know she was in this because all I know is that one scene.
Well, and we'll tag that for a second and come back to it.
Okay.
But additionally, Best Supporting Actress went to Beatrice Straight as Louise Schumacher, who does not have that much screen time.
Oh, wow.
She does not have that much screen time in this. And that is also notable because we have another monologue that's lesser known historically, but has kind of taken on a life of its own in recent years, which I think is interesting, almost eclipsing the Peter Finch, Howard Beale.
I'm not sure what you're alluding to because I don't know it.
What I will say is you will know it when you see it.
Oh, like pornography.
But it's Ned Beatty. And he does not have that much screen time as well, but the screen time he has it's a glaring example of a recent example of this was in the Steven Spielberg movie that came out.
Yeah, what it was like when they
Fablemans.
had Judd Hirsch steal the
And
stage.
Judd Hirsch like totally was, it was like, oh my god, that scene was amazing. And then there were people arguing, well, is that a supporting actor, or is that, should that be something on its own? Blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So this is the other performance that is often talked about with that, which is a Ned Beatty scene and soliloquy, and they're not, again, both of these characters are not principal characters, and they're not even on screen that much. So that's kind of notable, again, which is a lot of information for something that all you know is that, like, oh, this newscaster goes crazy or something. I don't know. Like,
so I don't have any context for why he can't take it anymore. I literally have no context for any, but I do know that I typically hate shows that are set in newsrooms. Like, I hated Newsroom, and I don't like. So my fear is that the dialogue will be so poignant as to be non-human. Like, Aaron Sorkin is someone who does this a lot, where you're like, damn, that was a good soliloquy, son, but no human being on earth sounds like that.
So this is a good time to mention that another one of its Oscar wins was Patty Chayefsky for Best Screenplay. It was a rare time where someone could be like a superstar writer, right? Like, it's kind of thing where most people, like, again, we've talked about on this very show that, like, the writer usually does not get much credit, right? But remember, this is Patty Chayefsky, like, it's Altered States he did, right?
Oh,
like Marty, like The Hospital, Paint Your Wagon. I mean, like, he was like a working screenwriter and novelist. But this is, many, including me, say it is his masterwork. And one of the reasons why is because of the naturalism and poignancy of the dialogue.
Oh, fantastic.
So, which isn't to say that there isn't, well, I don't want to put my finger on the scale on it, but I'd be interested in your take on, first of all, those performances, because it was nominated for Best Picture, did not win. It was nominated for Best Director for Sidney Lumet, did not win. It won for Best Actor for Peter Finch, who won, but it was posthumous. But William Holden was also nominated. So they nominated two people from this film as Best Actor. And then Faye Dunaway won for Best Actress. And again, we're going to come back to her character in a minute. Best Supporting Actor, Ned Beatty, nominated, did not win. And then Beatrice Straight was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She did win. Best Screenplay, Patty Chayefsky did win. Was nominated for Cinematography. Was nominated for Editing.
Wow.
So, beloved by the Academy, and the first time they gave an award to a dead person. But that's the I'm mad as hell guy.
And I wonder how many times a film has someone nominated within the same category. Like, double nomination. That's got to be pretty rare, too.
It's kind of rare. So for Best Actor, here's who they're up against. Okay, are you ready? So Giancarlo Giannini for Seven Beauties. Okay. Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver.
Buckle sauce.
Sylvester Stallone in Rocky. And William Holden and Peter Finch in Network.
That's not fair to either of those two performances.
So isn't that nuts that like, that's what was happening this year?
Wow, what a good year.
So Talia Shire also got nominated for Best Actress for Rocky. Oh, you know who else got nominated? Sissy Spacek for Carrie.
I know, that is a huge historic nomination in the history of horror. That is insane.
Yeah. So that's what was happening there. And for Best Director, Sidney Lumet was up against Ingmar Bergman, face to face, not like one of my favorite Bergmans, but fine. But also Alan Pakula for All the President's Men. Wow. And the director of Rocky, John G. Avildsen, who is the one who ended up winning.
You know, I feel like even when Ingmar Bergman is kind of phoning it in, it's still better than,
it's still really great. I mean,
the world.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you.
Wow.
So for screenplay, Patty Chayefsky won against Cousin Kazine. I don't know what the hell that is. The Front, Seven Beauties, and Rocky. So the Rocky screenplay lost to this.
It's a very big historic script, and I'm sad to see them lose, but this sounds like it was just a rough year.
And the best adapted screenplay was All the President's Men, because of course it was based on the book by Bernstein, Woodward and Bernstein.
Yeah.
So, but also notable, just while we're looking at it, Harlan County, USA won for best documentary, which is like one of the all-time great documentaries. So
it's a rare year where even the documentary is notable.
Yeah, so it's wild that like this is the Rocky year. Like Rocky won Best Picture this year, but Network was like it was basically going to be, it was up against Taxi Driver, Network, and All the President's Men.
Damn.
All of which are timeless movies,
Classic.
more or less, right? And there's also Bound for Glory, which is a Hal Ashby movie, and that kind of lost the time. But
that's a little hard for me because I haven't seen Network yet, but I have seen Taxi, and I have Taxi Driver, and I have seen Rocky, and I don't feel like Rocky is better than Taxi Driver.
They're such different movies. Right?
I know.
They're such different movies. I do really, really love Rocky, but I also really, really love Taxi Driver. I really, really love All the President's Men.
Yeah.
And obviously I really, really, really love Network.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wild that performance-wise, it was Network with like a runaway. Jason Robards and All the President's Men was the only one that wasn't Network. For this year for acting.
Question about Network, because when I think about the comparison between those two movies, Taxi Driver and Rocky, both great stories, but the cinematography on Taxi Driver, I remember just the first time I saw it, it absolutely blew me away. Simple things using the reflections of the car rearview mirror to get our face in, so many little tiny things like that. How is the cinematography on Network?
I think it's fantastic. And you also got to remember, you know what else came out? Like Logan's Run came out this year too. And the A Star Is Born, the 70s Star Wars.
I kind of miss me with that one.
But also, people forget about the 1976 King Kong, which was a big deal. That was a big deal movie.
I am one of those people who forgets about that.
Yeah, so it's the one that was produced by Dino De Laurentiis. It has Jeff Bridges, Charles Grodin, and Jessica Lange.
Oh, you just had to say Bridges.
Yeah, it's the Jeff Bridges one, and it's huge that like because that was considered a genre film and also a remake of an unremakeable movie.
Yes,
at the time.
Yeah,
which is weird to think because there's like how many freaking King Kong movies are there? I don't know, it seems like dozens of them.
The one that just came out. The trailer was so bad I almost walked out of a movie theater, but then I was like, I'm not here to see that movie. Sit down.
This is just a preview that offends my sensibility. It isn't the actual film.
There's a point where Godzilla and King Kong have teamed up and they're like running at each other and they do like a fist bump. And I was just like, no, this is it. I'm done with humanity. I'm leaving.
Well, and I say this as someone, I completely, as a kid, was obsessed with Godzilla. I literally have a Godzilla action figure next to me right now on this very podcast. Huge Godzilla fan.
Which
most
Godzilla
of those movies
is that?
A classic Godzilla. But most of these movies are not that great, though. And to see something like Godzilla -1, which is so goddamn good, and like, oh no, this is like a real plot and like a real and then to have like, here's Godzilla and Kong and they're fighting. Like this is pro wrestling. Later. I'm not interested in this. Like this is like,
it was such a hold my beer moment when Godzilla -1 came out and Japan was like, do you not remember that this was meaningful for us?
Yeah.
And then we were like, make him fist bump King Kong.
Yeah, make him fist bump. Woof. So I haven't even watched that yet because I got, real movies to watch.
You don't need to watch it. We will never.
Am I going to watch it? I don't know. I thought that Gareth Edwards movie was fine. The one that had Breaking Bad dude in it. The Godzilla King of the Monsters. That was fine.
Okay.
But the fact that there's like, you don't have to settle for fine cinema anymore. There's like Shin Godzilla and there's Godzilla -1. Those are great.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll watch it in black and white again before I watch the other one where they fist bump.
Yeah, I think it's gonna bum me out. So I'm probably not gonna.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Wait until
I know what it is. I saw the other one. It was like
good. I do love.
It was annoying.
Is it Dan Stevens? Matt Stevens? The guy who played Matthew on Downton Abbey. I do like
No, never
his
saw it.
acting. He's in the Godzilla movie. He's kind of trying to break out of being seen as such a traditional British actor that he takes really bizarre roles.
Just to kind of like throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and he's quite good as an actor. He's in Abigail, the vampire ballerina movie. Not good, but his performance is fantastic. He's
Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire.
It needed a Chiron title. It needed a the New Empire.
Rebecca Hall's good. She's in it. She's she's consistently good. Brian Terry Henry's great. He's in this. I think he was the one that had a podcast on the other one, and I was like, this is annoying. Everything about it's annoying.
Did you see any of the Cabinet of Curiosities from Guillermo del Toro on Netflix?
I like those. I thought they were good.
Do you remember the one with Kate McCucci?
Yeah.
He's the guy inside the TV. Stevens is the guy who keeps.
Yeah. Well, he's also. I know him from Legion. Legion was amazing. He's
a really good actor.
I went to the Fargo TV show from Legion. I was like, oh, Legion guy like did a remake of Fargo or a continuation of Fargo. Okay, cool. I'll check that out.
Okay.
No, I like Dan Stevens. I mean, there's a movie he was in where he was an automaton.
Oh God, yeah.
What was that? I think is it called it was not a hit. It was like it was a foreign movie, but like it did not present as a foreign. I'm Your Man.
Oh,
I like that one.
I like that one. I think he does a lot of spaghetti against the wall, but he's usually the highlight of anything he's in.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, you have to really soullessly run things into the ground for me to not care about a Godzilla movie, and I don't care about that movie at all. Yeah. Like, why? How could you? How could you after you see like something like Godzilla -1? But anyway, that has nothing to do with Network.
Now, here's my segue. There are so many Godzilla remakes. Do you feel like Network would be a movie that could possibly get remade, or is the performances are the performances truly lightning in the bottle?
So first of all, the performances are lightning in a bottle. The timeline that this comes out, when this comes out, and how it addresses everything is lightning in a bottle because we live in a different world. So this is the kind of situation where this was a dark satire of like, this could be a scary future at the time. And that scary future has completely come to pass at this point.
It's an idiocracy.
I don't want to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything.
Fair. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But Oscar winner Faye Dunaway is the driving force for a lot of that, who plays a kind of role you don't see that often without requisite punishment, which is just the shark-like ambitious career woman that also is very good at doing the thing that she does. Like there's no there's no soul behind it, there's no morals behind it, but like basically I feel like it is a strength to the writing that it is Faye Dunaway, and it's one of my favorite roles that she's ever been in.
Okay.
But like it could have been a dude other than some specific special area appropriate power dynamics between the sexes and one relationship that would like not make as much sense. But I think it's earned. I think all those nominations and all of the wins are absolutely earned on this. I think this is. So people would think of this as an actress movie just because of the Howard Beale speech, which is one of the greatest ones of all time. Politicians have appropriated it and attempted to quote unquote remix it or whatever. And it still, to me, does not take away from the power. You will know it's coming. You might even be like, oh, I bet it's happening here. And then when you hear it, I would be interested in your reaction. Because for me, every time I watch it, like it's still like, oh, wow. Like you get like hairs on the back of your head.
Yeah,
like,
the frise, the ghost, the goose pimples or whatever people call them. Yeah. When an actor truly hits something, I still get a frise on my arm, regardless of if I know it's coming or not.
So I would be super interested to hear that because again, Peter Finch had a long career. And to capstone it with this is sort of like, yeah, that is a dude that was like like when was his first freaking movie? Like, I think it was, like in the 30s. He was
What was the
acting,
first
right?
movie ever made, right? I guess so.
Yeah,
I mean, the
so his
brothers
first
Lumiere
movie,
did that stuff in the 1850s.
he was there. He was on the train when the train came to the station.
He was the baby she was feeding.
Mr. Chedworth Steps Out, 1939.
Woo.
Oh no, he was 1935. The Magic Shoes as Prince Charming.
Ooh.
So you're talking about someone that like they were still talking about talkies at the time. That like that's when he started acting.
Not to mention out the gate as Mr. Prince Charming. That says a
Yeah,
lot.
Prince Charming to begin with. Yeah,
fucking A.
And he's in. He was always a well-regarded character actor, right? Like he, he's definitely had a late 60s. Sort of resurgence. He had a couple like he was a good actor. He was a good actor, but this is the movie that people are like, oh my god, and too much so that against. Shall I reestablish like who his what he was up against?
Let
just
us
for the
remind
Oscars?
ourselves, yeah.
Yeah, some of the greatest performances of all time. Performances that people will monologue about. Like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. Like people to this day, how many young men have just given that speech in the mirror because it's badass?
To themselves with no one watching.
With
Who
no
amongst
audience
us
of
has
any
not
kind.
done that performance for themselves? That is truly an interesting monologue. It's not quoted amongst friends. You do it for yourself.
Absolutely. And that is this performance, again, posthumous, so I guess you have to like take that into account. Mm-hmm. People was like, oh, this is better. Not that it's art can be rated, but it's better than You Talking to Me. Like it's better than that.
That's
so I'd be interested as an actress. I'd be really interested in your take on that because again, knowing that like it's not a competition, right? But of course, something like the Academy Awards, it is a competition.
Yeah.
So you have that performance, and then also you have Sylvester Stallone as Rocky too. That it's like these are what it's up against.
Like the performance that he
Travis Bickle and Rocky Balboa.
That like wrote him into our lives. Like it is hard to differentiate him from that character. Launched a career. Like, woo.
And then also William Holden in Network as Max Schumacher.
The other guy who was also in this
in this same movie, whose performance is very different. He's the producer guy.
Okay.
And I'd be interested in that as well because there's something I really love about that performance. Mm-hmm. And I would be interested in your take on that as well. But I think we have a lot of there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack just from the performances and from the writing. And I think this is when I bag on a movie, which I try not to do. The thing I'm usually gonna do is be like, the plot was weak, like it was just poorly written, because people were trying to get by on vibes or on look or et cetera, et cetera. And this is the opposite of that. Like, I mean, there is a through line with like all of my top 4, top 5 Letterboxd, whatever you want to call it, which is to say they all have excellent writing, like just like really like sharp, concise writing, and usually kind of sardonic or just kind of like jabbing in a really unique way.
Well, as an actor, I find that it's almost impossible to save a movie that does not have at its base good writing. You can't act your way through unbearably unrealistic dialogue. That's just never really going to happen. So if you're not starting with a script that at least has a sense of compelling narrative, I will excuse bad acting or bad cinematography for a good story any day.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I haven't even articulated my thoughts on Letterboxd yet at the time of this recording, but like I saw the TV glow.
Yeah,
perfect. Now, granted, I do have problems with some of the dialogue and certainly some of the delivery, but like from a just like, oh man, that's a really good story.
That's that scene where she's in front of the projector and it's supposed to be a really intense monologue, and it is written like hot trash. I literally had a moment where I thought, is this the acting or is this the writing? Is this the acting or the writing?
It's either way, it's not doing what it's.
And I literally thought, I don't think I could deliver this any better.
Yeah.
Like, what a moment to step outside the movie and just be like, as an actor, I wonder if we could even save this.
And how interesting of a film that like there were multiple moments that would do that and would take you out of it, and then it would bring you back in, and it would take you back out. It was like, wow, this is like jarringly inconsistent.
When it was good, it was so good. When it was bad, it was leave your body bad.
Yeah, no, it's I've rarely seen that. It's usually one or the other. It's usually, honestly, it's usually just mid. It's like that was fine to slightly bad is what most stuff is for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't usually get strong reactions from stuff, but sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, this is horrible and needs to like go away, be redacted from humanity immediately. But it was just, that movie was baffling to me because of just like, in the same paragraph of dialogue. It'd be like, how are you doing this? It's almost like you're doing this on purpose.
Well, that's how I felt about Kinds of Kindness, where I'm like, this is almost like skillful how much I feel like I'm swirling around in a washing machine of emotion.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I don't like it, but hey, damn, son, you're nailing it.
So it's very, Network is also a movie that not only was it well regarded by the Academy at its time, it shows up on a lot of lists. So there's a lot of lists that show up. I'm going to give you some of those right now.
Noteworthy.
Which is it's on the Letterboxd official top 250 narrative feature films.
Why do they do 250? Because I'll say that as well, and I'll be like, I'm talking about within the top 25, but it sounds unimpressive.
Right, exactly. Well, let's see. Let me see where its ranking is. I mean, actually, now you're making me curious.
It's in the top 250. It's 249.
250. It probably, dude. There's like Neon. Was it the what's the anime? Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Neon Evangelist.
Sure, whatever. All the anime people push their crap way up. Sorry, I mean, maybe it's great, but
tell me what
I'm
really
not gonna watch. Well, I'm not gonna watch like. Well, you need to watch like 7 series.
No, son.
I'm not
like if you watched Evangelist Orange, then you'll be ready for Neon.
And it's like I already stopped paying attention after the first sentence. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at. Where I'm like, you know what?
This is such an anime head as well, so I get what you're saying 100%.
Yeah, so like some of the stuff is like, and that's Letterboxd for you too.
It is like, for the people, so it is.
It is for the people. You're gonna get. That's the problem with populism, is you're gonna get popular opinion, right? And it looks like it's number 176 on that list.
Not bad.
The Third Man is 175.
Gotta get a good Zippy soundtrack.
It does better than Pulp Fiction and Double Indemnity. So
what is number 1 on that list? Just out of curiosity. Is it like Fellowship of the Ring or something you would kind of expect, but maybe not?
Let me look and see, because this
Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo.
Fern Gully.
Let's see. Oh, Harakiri.
Oh,
Harakiri.
Okay.
By Kobayashi, which I love.
Yeah.
It's the number 1 of all time.
I was not expecting that.
Harakiri, Come and See. The incredibly gruesome, terrible but amazing war movie from the 80s by the Russian filmmaker Klimov. 12 Angry Men, one that we both like, which is another Lumet movie. He directed this.
Oh, okay. So there is a good linear narrative.
I forgot. I actually had a note for that. I totally forgot about it.
Oh, yeah. You had said Lumet, and I wanted to go back to that because I do typically like him, and I do think he's a very thoughtful director, and I'm not surprised the performances that you get from him are well. Sometimes I don't feel like the directors engage with the actors in a kind of way where they direct the acting. They direct the cinematography instead.
That's right. So there's also Seven Samurai, Godfather 1 and 2, Shawshank Redemption, Parasite, High and Low, another Kurosawa.
Not
think
3?
High and Low would be in there.
Not Godfather 3?
Not 3.
Why not?
So that's just the Letterboxd top 250. It's
curious.
Also in the IMDb top 250. It's on the 1001 movies you must see before you die. Movies everyone should watch at least once during their lifetime. Et cetera, ad infinitum. Like basically, when people are making like long lists of movies, it generally will end up on
I feel like I'm slacking.
Edgar Wright has it as one of his favorite movies of all time.
Ooh, I really gotta watch this then. I can't
Roger
believe
Ebert.
Roger Ebert. I feel like Ebert sometimes we're either exactly aligned or he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's so it is safe to say it's a critically acclaimed film.
Critically. So as I approach the end of these episodes, I always want to know, is there something that I should be warned about? Like when we just did Tampopo, I had to say that they do kill a turtle on screen, and like the film is fantastic, but that is, something that didn't age particularly well, and I, just heads up.
I don't think so. I think that there's things in this movie that match the sensibility of the time, which is the late 70s. And there are things that are so shockingly prescient that like it feels like it could come out last week. But I do hope this is a movie they never remake either, because I don't think you could.
No.
Like, well, you could, but it would be a lesser work.
You could literally, they might, because they love to do shit like that. But I think that if you're talking about something that is so clearly a winner from its performances and its script, why rewrite? It's like rewriting The Usual Suspects. Why would you do that? Everything about it is there, It's
right. You can only make it worse and or different.
Especially if the performances hold up, And
I do believe that all the performances very much do. And I'd be very curious also to hear your thoughts on the supporting performances. But I think that's going to be easy enough to do. Did you ever see Broadcast News?
No.
Okay. So Broadcast News, which is the James L. Brooks movie. And it's, for me, about the only movie thematically that I would stick with Network, even though they're not really that much alike, which is to say that it was almost like this is a dark parable of what could happen with media and news, but also what was happening at the time, but not like the way that they thought it was necessarily. But I think Network is a little more on point. But they are sort of birds of a feather, and also Broadcast News is great. I mean, it's really good. It's not like a top 5 movie of all time for me, but it's really good.
Okay.
And the great William Hurt performance, great Holly Hunter performance.
I do love William Hurt.
But there's not a lot of movies like Network, is what I will say.
Okay.
And look, that can mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
That can be
not a lot of movies like Cannibal Holocaust.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. There's not a lot of movies of? Some of the worst movies I've ever seen. That's okay. I don't mind that. But like, I would be interested, so my friends, Mackenzie and Ian at the Criterion Connection, they pair movies that they feel like are similar in theme or scope or scale. This would be I feel like this is a hard movie to pair up with something. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. All right.
So I'd be curious as to your take on that as well. Because I've thought about this, because sometimes when you're recommending something, you're like, oh, what's it like? It's like, it's like no other movie.
Which might be how I've missed it, because you don't get referenced into it. You just need to watch it. Like
I'd be like, oh yeah, it's like Network plus this out for other movies, but it's like, yeah, but it's not really like Network. I'm just basically saying it's a well-written, like deep satire of media.
Award-winning, well-written, thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like to a certain degree, you could say like aspects of it would be, but there's no movie quite like this.
Okay.
So take of that what you want. That's my take on it. I'd be interested in yours. I'm kind of stoked you haven't seen it, because like, I don't think. First of all, I think you will like it. The question is this: to which level?
Yeah, I'm kind of hyped already about it, because I do love good writing so much. Is there any way to not, in a non-spoiler way, tell me your favorite scene so I can be like, oh, this is it?
Yeah. Well, so it's changed over the years, because I used to say that when I very first started watching it, it was the lead up to the scene that everybody knows.
Okay.
Right? To the Mad as Hell scene. And I still love it. It's still top 3 for me. And then I would say, well, it's the Ned Beatty scene.
Okay.
But now I feel like that's all that, like, especially like certain types of people of a political persuasion, it's all people focus on. So now I'm like, nah, that's kind of overrated now. That it's still amazing, but it's still like, but there is a scene, and I think you'll see it, where it's all about Peter Finch's reaction to like what's happening, where he just kind of deflates almost.
Okay.
And that to me is the movie in a nutshell.
Ooh.
And that's what I'll say, that like, and I think you'll see it and you'll be like, oh snap. Like,
okay.
Whoa. It's one of those things you're like, okay. Because if it was just like the, if it was just the mad as hell speech, amazing, great. But like it's how it happens and where the story is at that time and how it's progressed to be at that point is pretty notable. I think you will know it when you see it. Is how I feel about it.
I find it almost impossible to believe that this film got that many awards and nominations if it was simply that one scene. If the whole film was just that would be impossible. So
it would be iconic.
Yeah.
Even if that was the only scene, people are like, oh man, that one scene is wild though. Like but in that way that like there's like sometimes it's like, oh, there's a really great monologue in this and the rest of it like ain't nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is not that at all. And there's even like some of the lesser, I feel like there's an elegance to the language that like there's characters that are describing other characters and there's just kind of like this real nice writing to it that coupled with like real nice delivery. I mean, it's hard to get better than that.
My husband and I watched American Fiction. Both of us were completely like gobsmacked at the way that it managed to hit wittiness and realism. And like that is just the gem of writing for me. So if that's what you're describing, I am like foaming with excitement to see this film tonight.
And I think that you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be on a ride with this one.
Yeah.
Like, cause there are like great highs and there are some massive lows psychologically. And again, for me, I think that there's a certain amount of unease of just like, wow, like it's crazy that like in this media landscape now, you're like worried in certain ways then for these characters. And that's probably all I should say about it.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. I'm super excited to watch the movie tonight. And yeah, we'll cut out, and when we come back, I'll have all of this like
we'll find out if you're mad as hell and if you're going to take it anymore.
We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
So we're back. You have been officially networked.
I have
How
been
does it feel?
fully networked. It feels really good. Like, both my husband and I had not seen the movie before. And I will say, as soon as it ended, my husband turned to me and he went, well, I'm really glad that I know what that is now.
Right. Well, because it's something that it ends up in culture in kind of weird ways that people usually can't trace back to the movie itself. But people just kind of, oh, I don't know why I know that. I just know that. In very intrinsic ways that are just like kind of like in like the zeitgeist, but not in ways that people are like even I go back to that. There's that meme of like the nodding where it's like what is it, Jeremiah Johnson and it's Robert Redford, but everyone thought it was Zach Galifianakis.
I know, like, right? Come on.
How do you like what? Why? What movie would that be? And first of all, isn't it very clearly not of this era? But okay, sure, whatever. But I feel like especially as anything with like media critique, like the slightest, like, oh, well, it's definitely this network plus this.
I don't
and
think
it's like, well, but is it though? No, because there's so much more to it.
You tried to say like, I don't know if I can fully describe this to you. And I was like, really? It's not like it's Brazil or anything. And then I turned it on and I was like, oh, it's a little bit like Brazil, isn't it?
It's a little bit like Brazil, actually, yeah. Which is funny because that's, as we mentioned, one of my other favorite movies of all time, right? So apparently that I got a type, as they say.
Yeah, well, we all kind of do, though.
So let's start with, how did you feel about the performances?
Wow. it's interesting to go into it knowing that the performances were so lauded because it felt like, well, would I have noticed it without those? I definitely think so for maybe the Faye Dunaway character, and definitely God, I'm forgetting his William Holden, not Pete.
William Holden. William Holden is
Was
which he
William
was
Holden the
nominated.
one opposite of Faye, or
Correct.
was
Yeah.
no? So I'm thinking Peter Finch then.
Peter Finch is Howard Beale. Yeah.
I didn't think William Holden was spectacular. I thought that Peter Finch was a little bit better than he was, although it's kind of hard to notice the two of them. And I'm going to say something a little racist. It took me 30 minutes to properly know which one of them I was looking at.
Which old white guy it was? No, I mean, especially the beginning before Howard Beale kind of goes on his journey, right? You're just like, okay, one of these guys is the producer, the other guy's the anchor, and I can't pick out a lineup which one is which. Because he's such as a boring kind of
milquetoast.
The classic, like, Peter Jennings, Dan Rather style, just like, he's the guy that reads the news. He reads the news, and he's a trusted face because he's the one that is reading the news. And then, of course, it's very easy to tell them apart, like, after he goes through his journey, because, like, okay, he's the crazy one, right?
Yeah, which one is espousing insanity, but then also espousing I'm sure
brutal truths, right? There's also some brutal truths there.
There's some of it where you're just like, oh, I totally agree with no, but yeah.
Yeah, wait, what?
No.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about the endurance of Network to me, is that it isn't meant to be a black or white, Howard Beale was right, Howard Beale was wrong situation. It was supposed to be, this is a man that, because of the circumstances of his situation, was pushed to the utter brink and over, and a new type of entertainment was created, which is the kind of entertainment that we all now live in, by the way.
I know.
Isn't it crazy?
That was in. There were moments where my husband actually said this. We were sitting, so I want to give him full credit, because we were sitting next to each other, and what would be my favorite scene in the whole movie is definitely the scene where the black reporter or host is talking to her agents and the network agents about how she's not gonna fucking give up her percentage on the back end.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm the Communist Party and we're not gonna. It's just, it's like you're watching Dr. Strangelove. It is
the Dr. Strangelove of media. Yeah, you're right.
Like,
we're just like, oh my God. Like, that's so, and to think about at the time, this movie's older than I am.
Yeah.
Right? I was not born yet when this movie came out. This is 1976.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you really think about that.
It's crazy. Like, Jimmy Carter is president.
Yeah. Well, the way that Faye Dunaway's character is behaving is kind of like, oh yeah, she's a little, like, no, when you really put it in the time period, that is a very strange character for her to get to play, let alone for it to be written for a woman.
So do you see what I meant when I say that, like, her type of character is like something that we would maybe look at like a little more common now, but at the time there was nobody like that being depicted. No, I mean, not even like a woman with agency, but like, oh no, she kind of sucks too. Like, she is so driven, and in that way that, like, now I feel like we have plenty of stories that tell that kind of thing, but it's like, oh, she's girl bossing. It's like, no, she's a horrible person. She's awful.
It's almost like she's the beginning to every Hallmark Christmas story. Like, girl lady,
this is the starting position,
she works
right?
So hard, she can't stop. Like, she can't stop. But at the same time, she works so hard because obviously she has to work that hard to get noticed. But even when they're having sex, she's still talking about work. She's always talking about work. And, like, the one thing that didn't work for me was the romance. And this, like, insistence that, like, why would you think that she would care about you? Even when you're fucking, she talk about work.
Right. So in that, and I agree that the Max Schumacher character, William Holden, who I generally like, is like, he's only okay in a movie where I feel like everyone is just like destroying it. Like, so it's sort of like the fact that he was nominated is sort of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But like, against Peter Finch as Howard Beale, like, come on, were you watching the same movie? But that said, my theory is that it all has to do with that conversation that Max and Diana have, where he's saying like, I'm your last contact with human reality. And what does it say? The shrieking nothingness you live the rest of the day. Like, and because think about the time at 1976 of like, this was like the Faye Dunaway character. This is like something out of sci-fi, that somebody could be this amoral and careerist to the point of just like not having a baseline of humanity. And so he has that kind of, compared to some of the other soliloquies, that kind of small speech that war, murder, death, all the same to you as bottles of beer, and the daily business of life is a corrupt comedy. Like, hello reality television, by the way.
See, the thing was that, like, I didn't enjoy the plot line of cramming in the romance, but the speeches that they gave each other, the vehicle for the dialogue that was put into those scenes was exalted beyond the purpose of the plot line, which was like frustrating. Like, oh damn, but
it justifies why this. You're like, why? I don't care about this. I don't care about this romance. Like, I get it. Like, like why it would happen, but this is the least interested. But then you get those. It's the only way that Diana really gets a reckoning.
Exactly, or any dimensionality.
And even then, it's by a guy that like he's old news. He's old news. It's not Max Shoemaker's world anymore.
Oh, and like they keep calling him,
like literally old news.
They keep calling him middle aged, which I feel like is
like, all right, dude.
Which is a pleasant way to be like, dude, middle aged. It's the winter of your life. You're retiring. Like,
yeah. It's and that's something I was like, wow, you can tell a dude wrote that. But
you're 60, she's 30. Let's see if and he just keeps saying, "But I love you," and I'm like, why?
Yeah, why? Because you're hot. I mean, like, exactly. Like, there's no. But that's one of the things I like about the movie. And again, I agree with you. I think that's the weakest. That's maybe the only weak part of the movie for me. Because at first you're like, why in the world? What? This is like phoned in from a different movie. But then again, that's the only way that you just see how completely immoral she is. And like the fact that she almost has the ability to have like Max be like, oh, here's your center. Here's your center of gravity for keeping your humanity. And she's not remotely interested in that in any way, shape, or form. Which is more like something that we ascribe to a dude.
Dude, she got the dude's lines in a lot of the dialogue that they gave each other. It was fantastic. I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
Like when they first met, when she was just like trying to tease him, there was a couple of different lines she gave him about like where they'd wake up the next morning. We're like, that's the dude's lines.
Yeah. So and I appreciated that, and I also appreciated that. The Faye Dunaway was rewarded for the role because she's fantastic in it. It's like one of the movies that to a lot of people kind of established her as, oh, she's like the real deal. Like she's not just like oh, check out this new ingenue or whatever. It's because and what's crazy, she also did Chinatown 2 years earlier. So he goes from Chinatown to this.
That was the movie that the TV tried to play immediately after it ended. Like, just go right into Chinatown. I was like, whoa, chill back, my friend.
And what's in between that? 3 days at the condo.
Oh, French toast.
So, but then a lot, like one of the problems with those roles, because I think she's great as Evelyn, obviously in Chinatown, and I think again, if you want to hear more about 3 days at the Condor, Sam Cedar, Majority Report, was on that Movie Night Extravaganza episode. Kathy Hill is a good character, but there are problems with that movie and the fact that like, wow, you're just okay with being kidnapped by this dude because he's hot, huh? Okay. So the fact that their turnaround on this is just to have her be this kind of just amoral badass, like completely, full of confidence and just one of the people that were at the time ruining the world, but in a way that's like, wow, isn't this a horrible parable of what could happen? Which of course absolutely did happen.
But she was also written in, so for her to be such a unicorn character that like doesn't exist, she was written in a very realistic way where her dialogue didn't seem stupid or slanted. And you didn't like her, but you weren't like, oh, I just hate her because she's the villain. And you were like, no, I can see how she got to where she was.
Everyone's the hero of their own story, right? That's what they say. The secret to playing a great villain is that nobody thinks that they're the villain. They're the hero of their story. Everyone else is a bunch of chumps.
And they even play with that a little bit when he walks away from her and he tells her his version of the story and how it ends and music swells, goes back to wife, and you're like, well, that's if you're the protagonist. If she's the protagonist, asshole leaves, door closes.
Right, exactly. Well, and again, I firmly believe it's that exchange that got him that nomination.
Yeah.
Again, that there's again, I love the movie, but we talked about what the other competition was. Like, you're up against Travis Bickle, you're up against Rocky Balboa. Like, I mean, it's like look, it's good. It's not that good. Like, again, and that's fine, because that's what being a supporting actor is all about, right? You're supporting with your performance. You are supporting everything else. But he wasn't nominated for supporting actor. He was nominated for best actor, again, against Peter Finch,
because the movie can't quite decide who the lead character is.
But who was nominated for supporting actor and did not win, and we talked about this, Mr. Ned Beatty.
Now that's amazing, because you told me he was going to be in the minutia of the film, but that it would still stick out. Not only does it stick out super hard, there is a scene from another film that I saw where I was like, oh shit, that was just a copy of this scene.
Yeah, it's an exact copy. They even in a recent episode of The Boys, the one that aired on July 4th, right? They homaged as much as you can without being a straight ripoff. It was like, oh, this is Ned Beatty's Speech and Network.
And I watched that before Network, so like I'm having this like frise of like, oh shit. Oh.
Yeah, they just, we're gonna steal from the best, I guess, and also, unfortunately, all of it's still true. So, like, because again, and for those that for some reason are not in the know, what they're talking about is this insane soliloquy that Ned Beatty, as the executive, has, that is basically saying how the world works. This is the way the world works. There's no borders. It's all just corporations and profits. Like, the Arthur Jensen character is like, barely is in it, except for he has he's trying to ground Howard Beale. So he starts off with, you have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. And like, it's like, oh, and the way it's shot, I wonder if you like this as much as I do, like with it down the table.
Yes.
And you're just like, oh, what is happening right now?
and to have like a kind of pudgy, roundy kind of dude shot in this exalted, fully like, ooh, and the tempo between the like, and I won't, and then back to the kind of and it was good.
Like, and there's like a build, and then there's like
brimstone,
and when he gets back to and of course the apex of which is, and you will atone, and Peter Finch's reaction is just like what any human being's reaction would be, which is abject terror, like scarier to me than a lot of horror movies, frankly. Wow. Not the least of which is like, that's a villain that actually exists in the world. Yeah, but there's that whole, like, there's only IBM, ITT, AT&T, DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, Exxon. Look, most of those corporations are still around.
There's only one of them. I was like, oops, you had to be the shit one that I don't know now.
And it talks about how, like, even, like, the Russians, like, at the time were the enemy. Like, they're not talking about that. They're not talking about Karl Marx.
And for it to hit so hard again, for it to still be the Russians, it's really funny. It reminded me of, it's shot for shot very similar, could not possibly be without homage, scene from a Charlie Day movie that came out last year, straight to Hulu, so most people missed it. It's called Fool's Paradise.
I heard of that, and I think I might even watch those, but
I think you would like it because it's very similar to what you described The Player to be being about.
Okay.
It's a farce about Hollywood and just the existence of Hollywood right now. Charlie Day plays a nonverbal, like, a mental institute patient who's been released, and he is a complete match for a very famous Hollywood star who's an asshole, and he accidentally dies, and they have him sub in. So he never says anything in the entire movie. It is all Charlie Chaplin. It is all body acting.
That's awesome.
And there's a scene where John Malkovich calls him in to yell at him about ruining Hollywood with his new style of acting and his new type of like charity that he falls into. And it is, you could
he does an Arthur Jensen style monologue
from Malkovich as well. Is really fun to watch him chew that.
Which is, I'm sure is great. I mean, like, so do you see why, like, and again, what I mentioned, there's 3 things I want to tag with that. First of all, definitely check that out. One of which is that monologue in the past like 10 years has almost eclipsed the Mad as Hell monologue, which we haven't gotten to. In terms of like people like, oh wow, this movie, you got to see this movie, it's crazy. Like people just apropos of nothing, there being just that scene excised, that like whatever 4 or 5 minute scene, and people be like, what is this from? This is crazy. And of course, one of the reasons why is because it's more true now than ever. But I believe I actually mentioned too, and I wanted to look for it, that there's a moment that Peter Finch is Howard Beale just. You see him kind of collapse in on himself.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you notice that, where it says like, oh.
That was the level of acting that made it feel like Peter Finch was always a notch above where William Holden was. Like that was really subtle.
It's so, and maybe it's because I've just seen this movie so many times that like it's like you just see him and he just goes, I've seen the face of God, and then like what does Ned Beatty say? You just might be right, Mr. Beale.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like again, and that's the kind of thing that I hope that when actors are like learning monologues to practice, like this would be like a fantastic one. You know, this is up there. Like I was big into the Army of Darkness monologue. You know, that's the kind of stuff I was on to. But then I was by the time I like discovered network and movies like that, I was already kind of not doing drama anymore. I wasn't really interested in it.
That's, it's really funny because when I'm thinking about this movie, I think about Glengarry Glen Ross in the same sort of way where like, oh, everybody knows that one monologue, and it's just that guy who comes in for just that fucking scene.
Just he's like, it's like 4 or 5 minutes, and then he's out, and you're like, what the hell just happened? Which is again, there's an argument that comes up. It came up with Judd Hirsch with The Fablemans. I mentioned that earlier. That like, is that actually a supporting actor performance, or is that something else? And I would argue it is definitionally a supporting actor performance, because again, the screen time, they're not the lead actor or actress. They're just doing that thing where you're like, wow, wasn't it crazy when that happened, that like made this incredibly emotional pivot that usually is, somewhere around the middle of the movie or something along those lines. And even if it's just kind of like a side quest piece of it, like it's like it wouldn't be the same without it.
Absolutely.
And that's which I was gonna say, like in terms of, and like whatever, we can get into the Academy, right? But like Ned Beatty should have won that year, but it was stiff competition as well. So as we,
I don't think that I don't think it happens enough to make its own category. To say like roles with under 10 minutes, that just seems ridiculous. And to put a like asterisk on the performance as though it was like, oh well, this person took steroids, you can't really like, no, this person came in and in
performance
5 minutes,
is performance, man.
They didn't need to be in the whole movie, and you still think about Alec Baldwin when he was in that one fucking scene.
Right. It's like the unforgettable scenes that make you be like, yeah, that's why movies rock.
Yes!
Right.
Yes!
It's like it gives, even if it's something where you're like, oh, I don't love like this part of the movie, or I have these problems with this movie or whatever, you're still like, but that one scene, good Lord, Yeah.
To start at the top and being like, I didn't like the romance. That is like, oh, I didn't like the cream on top of this delicious dish that I could just smush the cream to the side of. Like, it's a minutia when you think about all the rest that goes into the melange that makes this successful. And for me, like, I can't believe that everybody quote like, oh, there's that one scene, I'm not going to take it anymore. There's so many quotable. Every fucking scene is quotable.
There's like 20 scenes that are just. But I want to get back there real quick, just before we move off of Ned Beatty. So at the time, so it won Best Actor for Peter Finch, Best Actress for Faye Dunaway, Best Supporting Actress for Beatrice Straight, aka Max Schumacher's wife, who was just a workman-like character actress for most of her life. Like she won a Tony. She she was in Macbeth in 1948, Macbeth, Crucible, just like real like serious film, you know what I mean? But like, and I think her performance is great. It's for what there is.
But you could argue she's in it about as much as Beatty is.
as much as Beatty is. So she won Best Supporting Actress. Faye Dunaway won Best Actress. Peter Finch posthumously won Best Actor. Ned Beatty did not win Best Supporting Actor. Jason Robards and All the President's Men did. And again, who else was in there was Burgess Meredith in Rocky. And Burt Young as Rocky. So Polly and Mickey were both, and Laurence Olivier in Marathon Man.
Whoa!
Crazy!
Whoa.
Crazy year for supporting actors. Like, those are all like, we all know exactly what those performances are like.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't go to Olivier.
I agreed. And you have, and Beatrice Straight was up against Piper Laurie and Carrie, Jodie Foster.
Of course, because Taxi Driver was that year.
Taxi Driver year. So, but what I'm driving at, why, and again, people are like, oh my god, why does he keep talking about the Oscars? Is because of it being the first posthumous win, unfortunately, for Peter Finch, who perished. Which is a notable part of history.
Yeah, he had a heart attack, right?
Second of only 3 films that ever won 3 of the 4 acting awards.
Really?
So, first one, Streetcar Named Desire.
Shut the front door.
Second one, Network. Third one, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, wow. What company?
In the history of the Academy. Isn't that crazy?
And Streetcar Named Desire is a play of award-winning note as well.
Oh, it was an astounding performance.
Who wrote
all around.
this one again? I forgot.
Patty Chase.
Yes, Patty. And this won for script as well?
Yeah. It did win for, Best Screenplay written directly for the screen, so not adapted, but original screenplay.
That makes so much sense.
And then it was nominated for cinematography and editing. It did not win either of those. It was nominated for Best Picture, and Lumet was nominated for Best Director, but did not win.
Which is a shame, because I really feel like you can see his direction. You can really see that the performances were a quality of his being there.
I think it's between this and 12 Angry Men for his greatest direction. Because again, and you and I have talked about this, I don't remember if it's on the show or not, but just like how you can make a table of people talking visually interesting is like, that's...
And
good on you.
And like, even beyond the visually interesting part, what I think is crucial to both of these films is that Lumet seems to get performances of his actors that engage you in the dialogue. You really feel what people are saying, and it's hard to get that way because it could easily just be people yelling at each other. Like, I feel this way, and how dare you cheat on me? But it's like you really feel her when she's saying like, "Oh, is this the autumn of your fucking life, and you're gonna go have a winter romance?"
Yeah, like the contempt. Again, I agree with you that like it's not because everyone. First of all, if they dared remake this, which they never should, everybody would be at 10 the entire time. You see what I mean? It's like this is like. The worst thing you could do would be like, yeah, it's not quite as good as Network. The original one. That's the worst. And everything else would just be like, that is a travesty. It is, it shall not live. It should not live.
And you know what is so funny about this is when I was looking at stuff about Network after having watched it, Aaron Sorkin talks about how this was the quintessential starting point for him as a writer-director. And I'm like, well, you misunderstood it, sir.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Luckily, you don't have to be culpable for what influenced you, or what you influenced.
You can so see it. You can even see it in shows like The Morning Show. You can see how Faye Dunaway's character influences directly what Jennifer Aniston is doing in that show right now. So like, oh wow, and it's like 50 years ago, and you're just picking it out.
Yep. No, it's. When I said this is an influential film, I meant it. I mean, and in ways that, again, the only thing remotely close to it is broadcast news, and that's approaching from a very different angle.
Very, very different angle. And to even say something like Newsroom, nope. Also, because none of them have the, like, irreverent, like, I can't describe the necessity and insanity of the injection of the Howard Beale story. It is clutch to the success of this.
So let's talk about Howard Beale. Let's talk about Peter Finch as Howard Beale. Again, we talked about the utter ubiquity culturally of the I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Usually absent of any of the context of the 2 to 3 minutes of physical, emotional, and mental buildup that happened before that. Because again, it's apotheosis. It's not coming out of nowhere. It's like he decided he was like what's I forget the phrase is. He just got sick of the BS or
Yeah,
whatever.
the
Well, that's
bullshit.
what
He
says,
kept saying bullshit.
and like, and you can tell in the performance, like when he like slaps his hands down and it goes up close and you see him, he's wet,
sweaty.
just
You can tell the
wet,
difference
sweaty.
between him and the other guy, and there's no point at which I'm like, oh, Peter Finch is the sweaty one.
Yeah, exactly. That is the point. That, like, I know exactly who Howard Beale is. I know exactly. Like, that isn't Peter Finch anymore. That is Howard Beale. He is transformed into this mad prophet of the airwaves. But he's doing it in a position of this is the unwanted ending to a career what he tried to do. He played by the rules. He did everything he was supposed to. He did, and none of it mattered. And it's. And like he's dealing with that while dealing with the fact that he lives in a world that again is much worse now. But he was like, "This is unfair, and something should be done about it." And that's what he built up. And what he built up to is like, just open your windows right now. Remember, this is the era of monoculture. Everyone's watching the same like 3 stations, watching the news program right now, and it builds to that. And then people do it too, because people are like, "Yes." I am mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
But so like as soon as I saw all that and the screaming out the window with almost no context and the kind of desire to want to scream out the window because everybody else is screaming out the window, I turned to my husband and I said, "Oh my God, it's the birth of Twitter."
It's totally the birth of Twitter. And the fact that like that, just the rage, the outrage part has been attempted to be co-opted by reactionaries, usually with like a hollow failure. Is it never sticks? And one of the reasons why is because that's the difference between actual populism and reactionary appropriated populism.
Oh my God. Dude, so what was so astounding for this movie versus what I thought it was going to be going in versus what it was going in was I thought it was going to be Howard Beale was deeply misunderstood and he was prophetizing the truth and I'm going to be the whole time being like, why won't somebody listen to this guy? And like, there are times when you're just looking into the madness and you're like, oh no, this is how we got here.
This guy has actually snapped. He's actually snapped. And he happens, again, as you mentioned, he happens to be right about some very key things, but he is actually, at this point, clinically insane in some degree of variety that I would never dare to diagnose. Like he has been broken by his situation, and that is before dealing with Ned Beatty, too. Where at
the very least, having a mental breakdown.
He's having a mental breakdown, and then you get, and again, as things become more desperate and crazy, and he goes deeper and deeper into his the pathos of it all, like it's exploited. Oh, he's the mad prophet of the airwaves now. They set it up like a game show.
Yeah.
It's great. Where he's just like, all right, just do your thing, Howard. As if it's a performance. Like, no, he's like, you're exploiting like somebody who is clearly at a mental breakdown.
Well, yeah, and the William Holden's character keeps saying like I'm not gonna let you put him in your freak show, and that's what they're turning him into, a bearded lady, and with the stained glass window behind him. Something about that scene when he first comes out made me think of Tom Cruise in Magnolia.
Oh yeah, okay, sure, I can see that.
Kind of like, oh my God, this guy is so much more powerful than you think, and what he's about to say is going to be dangerous.
Right, exactly. It's about to get real.
Yeah. And none of this is church, and yet all of this seems like church.
Well, and I think for me, it all starts, like the turning point of the film is, and I think it's amazing, is in that first Howard Beale soliloquy, where he just goes, "You got to get mad," because that's just like, I was paying attention, but I'm like everything is coming to very clear focus now. Like I am, as clear focus as a Ned Beatty in the conference room is, where you're just like, oh, what is happening right here? And because he's building up to it, let me have my toaster, my TV, my steel belted radials, et cetera, just leave me alone. Which, by the way, isn't that, God, what is? I just want to go back to brunch, if not that. Right?
I had every once in a while the TV will play a surreal game on me where it will heighten what I'm watching by doing the following. So right in the middle of that monologue, because I'm watching on HBO Max, it cut to a commercial.
That should be criminal. But what? How
fitting
for the message of this film that it would cut to. Now, if you said it was a tire commercial, I would definitely be. I would be like, amazing.
There was a moment
somebody did that
for a few seconds where I was like, "Is this one of them Starship Trooper Verhoeven type things. This is a commercial.
Oh, it was part of diegetically part of the film.
Nope,
Sure,
that's
yeah,
tied.
yeah,
Tied
yeah.
out right now. That's just tied.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So that. So yeah, getting back to like the exploitation of Howard Beale as he's a content creator. They don't care what he says.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter. All that matters is people want to watch
Everybody, they exploit this black exploitation,
Which, again, arguing about the back end, right? Making sure that which is just like, oh, no, you're platforming us so we can get the message out. So we're
or
into
even just saying, like,
here,
you know what? Get that crazy guy who's filming robberies and whatever political agenda you want to put on the show, I don't give a fuck. But get the guy who's taping robbery. Yeah. Like, there's such a lack of concern that it is dangerous. And they keep saying, why would they come to Howard Beale? Because the TV is pointed at him. He's on TV. And they keep talking about the power of TV, and yet they don't give a fuck what the message is.
And it's so endemic to the story, and so the reason why it's so much more elevated than anything remotely like it, in my opinion. Like, there's nothing that comes close to this as far as that.
No.
Right? But how do you say that? And be like, I get it, it's good, I'll watch it. I'm like, no, but like, you're gonna watch it and you're gonna be like, oh God.
It is inexplicable. Even so, I freeze framed this for you because I wanted to say this to you. When you put it up on HBO, it's got a picture of all four of the people just standing next to each other, like it's the Boston Common or whatever law show, and it says network. Yeah. Television programmers turn a deranged news anchor into a mad prophet.
Wow. Yeah, that's okay.
Worthless. Who's gonna put that on?
Yeah, that is like someone that clearly did not watch the movie.
No.
You know, that's like, and it's hard to describe to people. People be like, I don't want to watch a movie from the 70s. I know what that's gonna be. I'm like, no, I assure you, you don't. I assure you don't. And one of the reasons why it's not always in the zeitgeist, like a lot of other, especially like Scorsese movies and things like that, is that it is like the blatant critique. Look, it's the same way, like, why can't Alex Cox get the sequel to Repo Man made? Well, because like he's spent his entire career like criticizing the wrong people, and they're like, hey, we don't like that you do that, and we're not gonna help you in any way, shape, or form. No. And this spoke a lot of truths that at the time were just like, hey, watch out, this is a dangerous path that we can go down. Yeah. That became reality. Almost all of it. Not exactly the violence aspect of it, but look, right up to it.
If I had to try to bumble into getting people to understand the difference of this film, I would say that it has the level of prescient humor that Idiocracy has, with the lens of Dr. Strangelove, like the height of that kind of acting, filmmaking.
Yeah.
But it's still so fucking funny at point. Like the way that it ends.
Oh my God.
How do you not laugh at that ending? But it's also the ending. I mean, we'll spoil it for you guys. It ends with exactly how it should have started. He says it's going to end that way, and you're just like,
you know from the beginning, like from the very beginning, like you know. But the last lines. This is the story of Howard Beale, the first known instance of a man who was killed because he had lousy ratings.
Yeah. How do you not laugh at that? And you're just like, it's this like stifled gurgle that comes out of your mouth because of the insanity that we live in.
Right, because and like you have to laugh, because what else are you gonna do? To start crying? Because it's true, because you get to see it turned into like an actual circus at some point, you know, with like the lights and everything, and then like, but why? So why do the ratings go bad? Oh, because it's just a bummer.
It's too much of a bummer. It's too much of a bummer. They don't kill him because he's dangerous or he's espousing anything. No, it's because his ratings are bad.
I don't know. I'm not so into this anymore. Which is sort of like how he started. It was just like you know, they use the phrase "howls in the wilderness" are like overused. But like, what is that initial like on camera breakdown of him other than just like howls in the wilderness, right? That connects with people and like starts up what, you know, like, you think, is this going to be a social movement? Is it going to be a cult? Mm-hmm. Like, what's happening? What's happening? Like, no, it's just, this dude just got driven over the edge.
Yeah, I thought we were going to watch him, like, build a cult, become dangerous, and need to literally be taken down for actual danger.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that at all. And then the whole time, he's like, what, television's not the truth. Television's a goddamn amusement park, right? He's saying, like, I don't have anything to tell you. Everything is, and that turns into, well, everything's hopeless and we're all, we're all doomed. So whatever. And then people are like, oh, this is a drag. We don't want to watch this anymore.
Yeah, they just check out. Like, we're done.
and then like, what does Max Schumacher says? He's talking about suicide of the week, execution of the week.
Yeah, we could turn it into a terrorist of the week, and they keep making
yeah.
Like, I think I saw this on Fox, and even when they talk about like we're the whore network, and you're like, oh yeah, that was Fox for a while,
yeah.
And now we're there right now.
And I love that the back and forth between Peter Finch and Holden of what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisy of our times? Do you think you'd want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisy of our times? Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times. Just the way that, like, if it was just that one line reading, it would be like, oh, that's good. But the fact that they say the entire phrase back to each other is like wonderful.
It points out how incredibly empty the phrase actually is. There's right. Nothing to the grandeur to which it seems to contain. They did a really good job of that, kind of like including dialogue that sometimes feels clunky in other films. Like, you're right, another film would have just had that one line and then left it.
And it's still a good line, sure, but the fact that, like, every time it's said, it kind of like imbues a different meaning. That shows, like, again, I'm so glad that Patichevsky won for this, because it's all in the writing. I mean, it's in the performance too, but it's almost all in that.
Can't
writing.
perform bad writing, right?
It has to be bop, 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 and every time, like, the absurdity of that phrase is going to be more crazy and more, like, hilarious, and it is funny.
And it's so interesting, because knowing that Sorkin saw this and thought, that's the flavor I'm going for, but
that's the thing I want to do.
He has a bad palate. I'm like, oh yes, no, I see, sir. I thought there was no way to do what you were doing correctly because it's so fucking annoying. You're just genuinely bad at it.
Yeah, it's the
timing just isn't right. It's too precious.
It's the Foo Fighters to Nirvana is what it is.
Yes, it's a distilling of it that doesn't hit at the essence of why. The great example is the scene right before they decide to kill him. They're all sitting in that room and they're tickering back and forth about the ratings, and all of that is jargon that should be meaningless to us. And that scene lasts for like 8 minutes of meaningless jargon, but the way that it is used and the way that the actors are delivering it to you gives you the context. They could be saying whatever the fuck they want to. You know what's happening.
You see what it's building to. You feel it emotionally, even again, and again, this isn't supposed to be the bag on Sorkin, but Sorkin, who's king of like the walk and talk, the info dump or whatever. It's anything but that, because again, as you mentioned, you don't have to care about what it is they're saying, but it's the decisions that they're making.
Yes.
And how it affects everything else that is like, oh,
yeah,
and then they just go out and like, like when they go out and say it, it was just like, well, we could just kill him.
And so Sorkin flipped that over, and he doesn't really care what they're saying, but how they're saying it, and that's why it doesn't work. Right. That doesn't work. Yeah, and then we could just kill him, and then even Faye Dunaway just sitting on the couch, like, I think we should just kill him. Because they're like, what are people in the room? Let's get a feel for the room. And she just outright just jumps right on it.
Well, and that goes back to the interaction with, again, the weakest part of the movie, her affair with William Holden. And then, like, that kind of comeuppance that... But is it really even comeuppance? Because she barely acknowledges it. But, like, from the audience perspective, we get a little bit of the, like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, you should have a moral center. You'd be thinking about humanity. But what I like about it, doesn't get over to her at all. She didn't give a shit about that.
I think she would have made that decision whether or not she had been dating the William Holden character.
It would completely irrelevant. Yeah. Completely irrelevant. But it has nothing to do with it. But again, the reason why that relationship works is because you see that's like a exit ramp, right? And she chooses. She's like, don't she choose not to take it? She doesn't know why you would take it. Like, it doesn't, like, she doesn't even like register her because she's that like far into where she's at, and that gives you a signal to the like sociopathic element of just like, no, I need this to be successful. What do I need to do to make this successful? That like goes beyond good taste. It goes beyond being part of the public square. It goes beyond literal life and death. It's just it's the achievement of the goal with nothing else. Again, characters always character traits usually ascribed to male.
Yeah, and it makes a commentary that if a woman wanted to succeed in this industry at all, she would need to just strip herself of anything that would be considered feminine to a degree that is more masculine than her counterparts.
Absolutely. No, and it's again, it's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite roles that she's ever done, because like I think she's astounding in it, but it's also, you know, props to Lumet, props to Chesky for like knowing that like, you know, that should be a female character, and that like that's what makes it special, because again, the gender dynamics of 1976 alone, not to mention modern constructs, but just in 1976 it was like, again, it plays like sci-fi back then, I would imagine. I don't know, I wasn't born yet, neither were you.
No, but you still see it in the nuances that characters like on the morning show, like with Jennifer Aniston, if that's still showing up 50 years later for someone in media, in a show about media, then we know that it needed to be talked about at least a little bit back then. Would be disingenuous to not include it. So I appreciate that they rounded themselves off in that manner. I also thought that the other predominant female character, the black television host, was very well written.
Lorene Hobbs, right? I think is her name. Yeah. Well, and, like how they introduce each other. You know, I'm a racist lackey of the imperialist ruling circles. you know, just that sharp, right? And then then you know, it sounds like a basis of a firm friendship. Is like
that was
they understand each other. they know exactly what they are. Scene. You know. Yeah, and there's so, again, we talked about my deep love of plotted film. Which I guess I need to announce, because so many things is quote unquote just vibes now, where it's like, okay, cool, so you didn't bother writing a plot, right on. This is, you know, perfect example of it. One of the reasons it's one of my favorites of all time, because it's like everything, again, it inspired lesser works in, you know, people learning the wrong lesson.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you would say that, because there's a whole big wave on TikTok today because Maxine with 3 X's came out, and the trilogy is, everybody's like, oh, the trilogy. And for the first time ever, reviewers are standing up and saying, so are we just going to watch movies that are vibes, but actually no plot? Because, like, this is pretty and it's cool, but, like, it is straight up garbage plot. Yeah. And that's from people who wanted to like it, and they're giving it 1.5 stars.
They were ready. Has there been a movie, Katie, in modern history that people have been more primed to just give credit to and find excuses to watch more than Maxine? And I say that because think about like the phenomenon that was X, hitting at the right time, you know, peak COVID, et cetera, et cetera. Oh man, he made a prequel movie too. Oh, that's crazy. And like,
and the prequel was actually a little better, so maybe this one will be even a little better.
Definitely better. Maybe the third one's going to be even better. And everyone Mia Goth is everyone's favorite actress, you know, now. Oh, everybody loves Mia Goth. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Except for Infinity Pool, which I actually thought she was good in, but like nobody liked
Infinity Pool. I didn't see it because everybody hated it.
It's I think it's really good.
Okay.
But her character's incredibly annoying in it, but that's supposed to be the case.
That's the point,
you know what I mean? Like it's I actually like Brandon Cronenberg a lot. I like Possessor and Infinity Pool quite a bit.
All right, okay.
So Infinity Pool got a bad rap, and I feel like that didn't get as good of a hearing. Whereas I think there's been unearned praise given to these Ty West movies, where it's like people are building them up like they're something more than what they are.
Yes.
And I haven't even seen Maxine. I'll probably eventually watch it when it comes streaming. I'm not going to go to the theater to see
Well,
it.
I just don't deeply tell you not to, because there are people who I know for whom that was the height of cinema in the last several years, and they came out of that being like, so what just happened to me?
I think you're disappointed.
Because I was gonna give that an easy A, and now I can't find a single nice thing to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's you know, it's again, it's one of the reasons we have to treasure films that do go the extra mile, and that don't insult the audience, that do like leave you wanting more, that don't, you know, be like, what was that? That was like I just ate like a bunch of like cake frosting. Like my stomach kind of hurts. I'm questioning my decisions of the past couple hours.
So I can see the desperate struggle and decision to want to be like, oh, we need more movies like Network. Well, we don't have movies like Network, so let's remake Network. And you're like, no.
No, you've learned the wrong lesson. Because again, yeah, Network was coming from a position of like, there's a reason why it's on all these lists, which I'm sure now you understand. Like the 1001 movies you must see before you die.
It should be higher on those lists.
Do you see why you get mad? But I'm like, what? It's like, okay, it's above Pulp Fiction, but below, like, are you kidding me? Like, how many animes are like above this? Where it's like, cool, I'm sure that's great, but come on.
I do, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how to in like less than 3 sentences shake a human being into watching this movie, because it's like, oh, it's gonna some heady political. Like, no, it's fucking dystopian and hilarious and well acted, and you're just like, oh, it's so hard to sell.
It's so hard to evangelize for Network because it isn't just one thing, and more than anything, I think now people have come to value somehow when things are just one thing. I've heard, again, I don't want to be a moratorium on Maxine, but I've heard people be like, oh no, it's a genre film, it doesn't try to be anything more than that. I'm like, okay, well, I don't think that genre is ripe for innovation right now, so I'm not going to go out my way to see it. If that's somehow okay with you, like, good for you. That's not my vibe.
That sounds like equivocating, because there can be amazing pieces with any kind of genre. To blame something's lacking on its genre is like,
well, it sounds like you're making excuses for a minute.
Yeah, exactly. You're just equivocating for something that couldn't fully develop itself. Because, there's no reason when you make a movie, they don't make you check a genre box in order to get funding.
Right, exactly.
Like,
yeah. It's not how that
Look
works.
at Everything Everywhere All at Once. What genre is that? Besides, I guess, magical realism? Like,
yeah, exactly.
A little. And you're right. Most of the films that do break genre are worth noting.
So it's hard to elevator pitch this movie.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell people like why that they should care about it. We're like, oh no, I saw Don't Look Up. I'm like,
fuck that. Fuck that.
Like, I like Don't Look Up. Despite the problems I had with it, this is nothing to do with that. This is like saying that like your Tuesday Blues Bar band. Someone's trying to explain Led Zeppelin. And be like, oh yeah, why we Tuesday Blues Bar band? It's like, no. Honey, that's not what this is. That isn't what this is. Like, you think you know what this is, and it is not. It is not what you think it is. But it's like, what can you do, right? Because that's most of the best pieces of art have nuance to them. They have depth. They have things that, like, at some point you'd be like, look, just watch it. Get back to me. Tell me what you think about it, because like I could sit here and tell you other reasons to love it. And like at a certain point, you'd be like, oh yeah, check. Yep, all those things were correct. Yeah. Did you love it? Yeah, it was good. But like, okay, should you have to do that? Like at a certain point, it just should be like, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. If you want to engage with it, I would like knock someone over trying to get to the microphone to discuss it. But I'm not going to push it on you.
Yeah.
So it's perfect for me. Because I have many times over the years, I've had people like, oh, what can I say? Oh, I like this movie. Oh, you should try Network. And I won't even say it's my favorite movie of all time. I won't even say that. I'll just be like, yeah, it's you should check it out.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. It's really good. There's a lot to it. And it's probably not what you think it is.
I try and throw one of those, like, I think you'll like it, where I'm like, oh, I'm telling you, right. Even the movie itself, maybe whatever, but I think you'll like it.
So right now, the IMDb Top 250, it is ranked higher than Stand By Me and Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yes, on both.
Okay.
Yes, on both.
But lower than, I kid you not, Rush from 2013, the 2013 Ron Howard movie, which is like, what?
Who spent all their time on IMDb getting the numbers up on that?
Juking the stats for Rush,
Jesus, Ronald.
Ron Howard just sitting there with a bunch of alts pushing
the
numbers.
Hey, man.
But I get it, because it's like, how would... So let me ask you this. How would you introduce this movie to like a younger generation of filmmakers that are film lovers that don't watch anything before 10 years ago?
That is a hard one to do. And I've had people older than me also push back on movies that are this old, saying that like it's just too dated. I don't bother watching stuff like that.
But that's the thing. Do you think this is dated?
Not in the least. I mean, it's
depressingly not, I would say.
No.
Like, where it's like, wow, it's crazy how little things have actually changed.
It's possible to tell that it's not color corrected.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the fact that you can tell it's of an era,
Yeah.
but like as far as its message and the things that are happening, it's like, oh yeah, but remember, this is before that was actually happening. Before there were these kinds of reality shows or scripted reality or
This is
whatever.
prescient.
Before Howard Stern, before Jerry Springer, before any of this, there was network.
Yeah, before any screaming head on Fox News was selling, peritoneal wipes. There's this, and it's. And I don't mean to be like it wasn't color corrected. I mean that like we over color shift our films now. And so you can tell that this was shot on film. You can tell that this was, edited without being like put through a filter. But other than that, and I do think that there would be no feasible way to cast the William Holden character across Faye Dunaway and expect that to work.
That would be the only quote unquote discourse would be, oh, well, that's not right. Because for some reason, this younger generation is really obsessed with any kind of May December romance or an age difference of like more than 5 years. It seems like to me, and I'm like, why? Unless it's a literal minor, why would anybody care? Is how I look at it. But I get that this generation does. Okay.
It just makes some of the lines that they deliver to each other seem really disingenuous because of where they would actually be in their adult lives as human beings. It just is like, this would play better if he was 45 and she was 38. Like if they were just a little closer to where they are. But like
professionally, he's further along. Yeah. I agree.
Unless it's really supposed to be meant clearly from the get-go that she's just fucking him to get ahead. Like the fact that he falls in love with her feels a little like you're old enough to know better.
Yeah, come on, man. Really? Why do you think she likes you?
But like the rest of it totally works for me. So I think if I was trying to pitch this to people who are watching for like, say if you were a filmmaker, I wouldn't have a hard time pitching this to you. If you were,
it's just masterful filmmaking. It's one of Lumet's best. It's like it's this or 12 Angry Men for me. Like those are the two best, but easy. Everything else is like a distant.
If you were someone who wanted to be a writer or a filmmaker, I would simply say to you, like, you need to sit down with this film and look at the ways in which it goes back and forth between what is complete absurdism to what is total realism, and the dialogue never skips a beat. Like, this is naturalism. This is probably where who's the guy who wrote American Fiction? Jefferson. Cord Jefferson. This is probably where his existence comes out of, and that's really important. Right. And actors, come join me for this is how you say stuff without yelling.
Right.
Very
right, simple. Because somehow it can be more intense, more threatening, more malevolent. That even again, people only think of the Howard Beale character in terms of like him yelling, right? And the fact that there is, but like some of the things that are like, oh, are like when it's just like the despondent, like so just like he's barely muttering what he's saying, and it's not doesn't make it any less salient than the stuff that he's yelling about. Again, the Ned Beatty speech, right? There's a couple huge moments, but like you said, there's a build, and it goes up, and then it goes back down again, then it goes up, then it goes back down again, then it stays down, and then it just has this explosion. And then it's just like, am I getting through to you? Like where it's like, oh.
And this is the way the audience is pulled back and forth into actually engaging with thinking about the topics that are that are part of this movie. It's not just to sit here on a bump on a log and experience a narrative. It's how is this making you feel as an audience member? I'm poking at you. And it might be a problem of the fact that like, short form video has taken clips of this out, and we only see the part where he explodes if you're watching it on YouTube or whatever, Instagram. But it is crucial for the actor to have a lead up. And maybe that's why people think bad acting, good yelling, good angry acting is just yelling. You didn't see the scene lead up to this. Yes, he's yelling now, but he earned it in the previous lines.
Right. There's this. Yeah, because it doesn't happen immediately. At first, you're like, is this like a movie about like a newsroom? Like, what's happening here? Like,
Mhm.
like you don't even quite understand. Like, oh, this guy's really bummed out. Oh, this like he's having a hard time with stuff.
Yeah, not even the first time he explodes is the "I'm not going to take it
Yeah.
anymore" speech. No, the bullshit speech is the first time he explodes. It's like 40
Yeah.
minutes later that you get the one that everybody knows about.
And it doesn't feel like 40 minutes later, though,
No.
because again, like from that point that you're like, oh, something crazy just happened here. That and again, I'm probably not supposed to use the word crazy, but when talking about people having a mental breakdown, but something crazy did actually happen there,
Mhm.
and that sets it up for like further down the line again, and that it's the perfect culmination, right? Because it's not just the writing,
Mhm.
it's not just the direction, it's not just the performance. All these things it's how it's shot.
Mhm.
Again, I mentioned the you got to get mad, and it goes
Yeah.
up like real close, and you just see like, oh crap, like this guy is off around the bend right now. Like, but he's had enough.
And
He's a guy that looks like he's had enough. You know why? Because he's had
And I
enough.
love that when they do that shot, they also cut back to the newsroom to show you how the cameraman has to be right there. Like,
Right there. Yeah, you
he's
see
losing it, and they're like, "Yeah, baby."
Yeah, let's get it in there. Let's get it in frame. Yeah, absolutely. And it's and again, I think when people engage with that scene, they're engaging with it absent any of that context or any of the like, no, why would they be doing that? Because they know that this is whatever this is going to be huge ratings, like whatever is happening right now. Like this is Bud's Wire shooting himself in a news conference like on like live television. Like this is like these kinds of moments. And again, most of those did not exist yet. This was an academic curiosity. It's crazy.
Yes, this would have seemed absurd to a viewer. Like, oh my god, why would they ever do that?
Why? Yes, and now it's like people try to manufacture those moments.
Now it's all
the time.
like Maury Povich, where is this every single episode they find out if somebody's father.
Right.
Every episode.
Exactly. And it's, I mean, the stark contrast, again, because it isn't just doing a media critique, right? It isn't just like a dark satire. It isn't just incredibly darkly, humorously funny. It isn't just well acted, well performed, well written. It's all of these things all at the same time. And it was doing it all decades before it all became reality.
Yeah, and yet we talk about Idiocracy. We talk about all these films. We're like, well, that was pretty prescient. And yet people just don't talk about this film. And I do not understand why. And to quote those scenes with Howard Beale without the context of the full movie, you don't understand how truly Brazilian, Terry Gilliam, those scenes are. They are so bizarre. And that is such an enjoyable aspect of this film for me. So the cinematography shifts. It's so fucking worth your time, but like a 2-hour movie.
Is it because it's too nuanced? I don't know if it's because it's too nuanced or what. Like, I don't understand. And I keep waiting for there to be, there's going to be like a resurgence. And like, no, there just isn't. It's like just nerds like me being like, yeah, you should watch it.
Yeah. Like, does Timothée Chalamet need to tweet about it or something? Or like hold up a box set on TikTok? Like, I don't know, but maybe.
Yeah. Like, and there's modern movies that I feel like get like, like that movie Nightcrawler, right? With what's his nuts?
McGregor? No.
No. Is it Jake Gyllenhaal? I feel like
it's Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. Which I liked. And one of the first things I thought about that, it was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like one of the things the network does. Like in that sort of idea of like here's someone playing on like, the worst parts of society and like the news vulturism and things along those lines. But it's one of the only times in like recent history, again, we're talking about an era that we have trenchant media critiques everywhere. On Twitter, on podcasts, on YouTube shows, like whatever, that none of it hits as hard as this does for me. And it's one of the reasons why, even though real life shot way past network a long time ago, like it still holds up. It still holds up. Like it's a unicorn of a movie.
Yeah, there isn't even a single, it's shot in media. They use telephones. There isn't a moment where I thought like, oh, there's no mobile phones. Oh, there's no computers. Like, it just doesn't get affected by that time period that it's in. It's so watchable right now.
Yeah. So it seems like a layup,
Yeah.
right? It's like someone's gonna be like, "Hey, have you heard this network movie? It's really good."
Yeah.
But it has to be something like this, of which again you can now see my like absolute delight and be like, yes, I will do it. that sounds
Yeah,
great.
'cause
Please, by all means.
Were you part of the Movie Night Extravaganza Network episode, or that was before you were part?
No, I was on it, but it was a crossover
because
episode.
Andy wasn't
so it was
there.
just Forrest. Yeah. It was Forrest, me, and JG Michael, and it's a good show, but I feel like the analysis of it was not as deep as this was, and there was a number of reasons for that. But I personally felt like it was a bit of a missed opportunity, just because I could do a whole podcast series about this movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's how many times I've seen it. That's how much I feel, how strongly I feel about it. And like when people talk about comparable movies, like I'm looking at the similar films on Letterboxd. The Truman Show, not really, but okay. Fight Club. Kinda, I guess, you know, and like attacking cherished institutions. And then there's Vice and Don't Look Up. So not one, but two Adam McKay movies. But Adam McKay's vibe is so different than this.
I mean, I guess if you're just going for like commentary.
But I get like how would you... All right, what movies is this like? I don't know. Nothing? Brazil is the first. I would say Brazil and Doctor Strangelove. My number two? Doctor Strangelove, I think, is actually
ones,
pretty good.
because I want people to know the level to which I feel like this is high level. Like, it's satire, but it is very... Like, people don't fuck around when they're like, oh, Doctor Strangelove, that's quantifiably good cinema. I would also maybe, and I know it's probably because it's just on my mind, I would throw in Repo Man, because the level of absurdism that it switches back and forth in while it's making the commentary that it's making about media, about consumption. Yeah.
No, I agree with that, but again, it's in the same family as those movies, but definitely its own unique entity. And that's a key corollary with all of my favorite movies, I think, is that they all are iconoclastic or you know, kind of paragons of their own thing. Yeah. That it's like, you just got to see it, man.
And to be completely honest, like, there aren't very many movies where I feel like you have to see it. Because it could be like, oh, you've seen blah, you probably... Like, no, but this is genuinely one of the few movies where I'm like, no, you just need to see it.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm always happy to see that it's on like that 1001 films you must see before you die. And these sort of like these lists that are designed ultimately in these days so that people can put them on their letterbox and brag about how many of them they've seen. but like whatever, however people get there is fine, because you get there because there's always going to be like movies like, okay, you're going to see Intolerance by D.W. Griffith or something, which honestly is dreadful. It's not like very interesting, but if you're interested in film, it's fascinating to see a movie from 1916 that's like 3+ hours long, that, you know, it's again, figuring the form out. You're looking at things from a position of understanding the form of film and what certain decisions and things were made that you have to see. You know, like in the way that, like, I think Captain Dr. Caligari still rocks, frankly. Like, you know, the old Nosferatu is like, you can still watch it and get something out of it. But there's some stuff that I call it the eating your vegetables of being a cinephile.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, I guess I should watch this. I'm not exactly excited about it, but I'll watch it. But then after you watch it, like, okay, cool, I'm glad I did. But this is not eating your vegetables at all. This is the whole meal, man.
Which is so strange because it sits on the table looking like it's like a delicious cake that's made to look like a plate of Brussels sprouts, but it's so believable. You're like, wow. No, they're little tiny Ferrero Rocher.
And I'm so glad that you vibed with it. And I guess I think it's probably pretty clear at this point, but we should ask the question.
Did I like it?
Did you like it?
I always put that question at the end as if it would be unclear at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty it's pretty
But
clear.
I guess if you fast
yeah.
forwarded to the last, I did genuinely like it without any kind of equivocating. I just liked it, and I mean, I could take or leave the romance aspect, but it's so inconsequential to the overall this of the film that I'm like, fuck it, who gives a shit? And it is 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like 2 hours. So I'll give it that as well, because there's so many 2-hour films that feel like 5-hour films.
Yes.
So like,
you're telling me.
God, I definitely like it, and I will probably be bothering people I know to watch it because I don't feel like anyone I know has watched it.
And you know, I'm in a situation where Forrest had never seen it before we did it on one of this Revolution crossover episodes, and he really liked it. But I'm also was like, cool, but I'm also not sure if he I'm not sure if you engaged with it as deeply as I have, and that's neither here nor there. You know, it's just sometimes it's timing. We're doing this many episodes, busier. Like whatever. But it was like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, but also people don't have to like things the same way that you do,
to the same
degree. So like,
yeah,
right. And I get where certain aspects of it, the things that would be like sort of super shocking, like people, you know, growing up with the Twitter and YouTube and whatnot, it may not hit exactly the same, but I think it still works with a modern context, meeting you where you're at versus being something where, oh, that's cool, but that's anachronistic. That's of that time.
Exactly. And that's pretty hard to do for something this old.
And that's one of the reasons why I think it's just such a miracle of a film. Yeah. And I agree with you about the romantic subplot. It's sort of like you could ditch that, and I would. For me, it's just a delivery system for that sort of like exit ramp for Faye Dunaway's character that. It's very clear she's not interested in it.
And at the risk of losing that development, three-dimensionality for her character, and the speech that William Holden gives her as he's leaving that room, I would just leave it in.
I mean, exactly. It ends up, is the weakest part of the movie? Yes. Does it justify being there? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely 100%.
So and that's a sign of another miracle of a movie where you can have something like part, but you're like, no, but it works with everything else. Like it's still amazing, even though like that's not my favorite part of it. But yeah, can you just imagine the discourse of like, well, it's not appropriate for a 60-year-old man to be. Oh my God, Jesus, that's the point. That is literally the point of the. Yeah, but it's that's not how people engage with that kind of. That kind of thing anymore.
So which also makes that a little bit of a hard pitch. And so I guess if I were recommending this to people, I would be sensitive to people for whom I know that is a deal breaker in cinema for them. They just can't get past that ledge point. And I would be so curious because as you're pointing out about Forrest and the way he engaged with it, I wonder if writers and actors would engage more with this because of how unique those two aspects are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it does stand out. Like you have to notice how good that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we did this after the boys episode at the time of this recording aired last week, and I was like, oh my God, like that's crazy. And then everyone's like, huh, what? And it's like, no, it's almost verbatim the Ned Beatty speech in Network.
And honestly, as an actor, if I was ever given a speech of that kind of caliber of density, you're damn straight I would look at these speeches to find the heights and the lows to make my performance dimensional. So I don't know if that's why I'm so into this, but it is a huge part of why I'm like, you gotta see this.
Like in that same way that why was Ned Beatty and Alec Baldwin, why were they nominated for these supporting roles when they're barely in the movie? Well, have you seen their scenes? Then you will understand why.
And then it gets thrown around when people are like, it's a masterclass in. It's kind of a masterclass in this, so it is.
And there's obviously there's people doing more than others, but there really aren't any weak links.
No, you even
and that's another thing that's great.
You even notice Lance Hendrickson.
By the way, Robert Duvall's in this movie.
So Robert Duvall's in this movie. So is Lance Hendrickson with
Lance Hendrickson is in this movie. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. No one's bad in this film. You're right.
And it's. I guess Beatrice Straight ended up being in she's the doctor in Poltergeist after this, so she got some stuff out of it. Even like the people that we don't think of as names.
I didn't know that.
Right?
She is.
Yeah. Which is funny because one of her most famous early films is The Nun Story. So that's kind of funny. That's Poltergeist and all that. But anyway, and she's probably the one that like caught the least amount of attention before after this, despite winning Best Supporting Actress.
Yeah, but she's an older woman, so what role are they going to put her in?
Yeah, she became invisible.
Yeah. That was her last fuckable year, man.
Yeah.
That is such a. Are you familiar with that skit?
No, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what it is.
I'll have to send it to you. It's Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I think Amy Schumer it was on her show. It's one of the few times that she is truly funny. And they talk about how a woman in Hollywood, when she reaches 40, that is the end of her life. She has had her last fuckable year, and she retires into this beautiful glade. And so there's all these actresses who make cameos in it that makes it worthwhile.
Sure.
As you're awash with gorgeous women who are no longer fuckable.
Yeah, right. That's good. Like I said, I think I got it in one, even without knowing what it was.
Yeah. So yeah, I would chalk that up to probably why, which is sad. I would have liked to at least heard that she went back to doing more theater because she's quite gifted for a scene.
Yeah. And she's in some good stuff, It's just that she never really. It didn't.
It's a harder sell.
It wasn't like a June Squibb situation where she gets like some vehicle like Thelma and gets to like have this like late career awesomeness. And that unfortunately is another two commentator.
I hope that the Thelma gets the recognition it gets, and that we don't talk about that as now like the third posthumous Oscar. Because
oh my god,
dude.
Don't even say it, but
I'll
she's 94.
Jinx it right now, but she is. Thank you. Bless. And everyone should go see that movie. I really want to see it. I have not yet. And everyone I hear talking about it is like the standout film of the year. Fuck Maxine, go see Thelma.
Yeah, it's so good. You will not regret it. I actually there's a friend of the show who I often talk to, whose tastes I largely share, that I was like, you need to go see this. And she was like, oh, I was going to write about it. But like, it didn't, I don't know anything about it. That was like, you just need to see it. You will love this. So, and the last one I recommended was Hundreds of Beavers, and she loved it. She was like, it's amazing. Thank you.
I love that Hundreds of Beavers is now reaching the point where even like my friends who just will watch just normal regular movies are like, hey, have you heard of this?
Have you heard of this Hundreds of Beavers movie? Like, what is this?
And I'm like, yeah, you should put it on. I know you're thinking about it. Do it.
Just do it. So how'd it feel having the tables turned on you on your own show?
I enjoyed it. I'm gonna say I had the of the three turns, and I know this isn't fair because of all the Oscar wins that network got you, and it was up against Emperor's New Groove and Ice Pirates. So it it wins, but it wasn't a fair battle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, nothing against Ice Pirates, but yeah. Not on the same caliber, we would say.
The script for that starts out written by the same guy who wrote Krull.
I knew that.
And then they had
my dad liked Ice Pirates a lot. So I saw it like real early on.
That's great.
I don't really remember
it doesn't
why.
And
like I was like, I'm sure this did.
It does not.
Like I barely like remember it holding up at the time, and I was like a child, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like it's real like cable TV VHS core.
Yeah. If you liked Flash Gordon and that kind of stuff.
Right. It's and like it's fine. I mean, like, God, Ron Perlman's in that, right?
And a very young Angelica Houston.
That's right.
Very young and gorgeous, but yeah, like barely any lines. And the guy who played Sloth.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that too. Yeah, Ice Pirates is just sometimes people will go back and be like, oh man, this movie is like a lost gem. It's like, no, this movie's just lost, and that's okay.
Just lost. It got, like we talk about it on the show, what happened to it is why it got so bad. It got budgeted badly, but like it's not Go watch 1976 Disney Black Hole. Like, that still holds up.
Right. Well, I feel like that's one like I'll eventually catch up to on the show for sure. But I didn't go out of my way. I was like, oh, cool. I'll check.
Yeah, no.
But I was like,
I was gonna say, in fairness, Emperor's New Groove was the last hand-drawn Disney film, which is a pretty good title for like, okay, but still, network best. And so to sit here and be like, oh, I got to just watch it. I got to watch a fantastic movie, and you held the reins for the show. Like, this is joyous, my friend. If you want to,
yeah. Can we do this every week? It'll be great. Yeah,
super easy. I feel less bad because I know how much you love the movie and you love to talk about it. But like, dude, this was phenomenal from my end.
No, like, look, if anybody wants to have me as a guest on their show talk about this film, I will do so gladly.
I would recommend it.
I would love to, because it is, for all the reasons articulated on this show, it is my number one movie of all time.
Nice. Yeah, I posted a little fact about Repo Man and tagged Eastwood Allen, the director of RoboCop, to be like, hey, did you ever think about doing another in-depth documentary about a movie?
Oh my God, on Repo Man?
He wrote me back, he's never seen Repo Man. So I told him, son,
are you going to bring him on the show? Bring him on the show!
Oh, that's a great idea! I'll ask him. We'll see.
I thought that was a setup for like
no,
what the next thing.
I was just like, sir, you need to see it.
Bring him on the show. This is like
shot in the dark.
That's oh my God! Wow!
I didn't realize.
Wow.
All right, it was just this morning, so I'll send him another message. Be like,
yeah,
be too cool.
Be like, hey, this guy who has RoboCop in his top 10 movies of all time, number 4, like he's suggesting to be on. He's the one I heard about the RoboDoc from.
I would have to be like,
brought up a good point.
Normally this show has just me and another guest, but today it will be me and Conan.
I don't know. I think you got what you have done. I would gladly show up, of course, but I think you have what you do very well, and I think it's very good as a one-on-one.
What I would have also loved for Eastwood Allen to do is that level of in-depth on network.
Hell yeah, especially because Alex Cox is still alive and we'll still talk about it. He was just on Jason's show. He was just on Jason's show last week. I haven't listened to it yet. I can't wait. And he also was on the Chapo Trap House movie show, kind of sub show that they have. He was on that as well. Yeah, he'll talk about all that.
Cool.
So
I could.
You never know. Have Alex Cox on. See what movie he hasn't seen. Although he's incredibly He's very opinionated, in a great way.
Hey, I never say you're not allowed to be opinionated on this show. If you didn't like what we watched, you can also say that too.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty opinionated myself, so it's a game respect game.
Exactly. Although like you coming on from Moonstruck and Network, like woo, you lucky bitch, because we have watched some questionable shit on this show.
Well, we know that my brand identity proposition is not that.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you right now. Next film, episode 17, Jingle All the Way.
All right.
We're gonna talk about Christmas movies.
We're gonna be jingling all the way.
We're gonna talk about some Schwarzenegger and some Christmas movies.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, any final thoughts on Network before we kick out?
Just ask you if you have any final thoughts. I mean, like, look, I think I've articulated it all. It's it's my number one favorite movie of all time on all the lists. All the reasons mentioned, the last few hours of discussion. I hope that it finds a new audience at some point, but I personally do not know how to do that. And I love it so much, I do not hard sell it to people because I feel like that would be off-putting. And I feel like it sells itself.
I think, we definitely have talked about that in the Lord of the Rings episode. You can't hard sell something when you love it because that's like squeezing the bird too hard. You have to hold it softly.
Next thing you know, people are like, it wasn't as good as they said it was.
No. And you need people to... I can see a group of people who would not like this movie, and that's fine. But there is a group of people for whom this movie is amazing, and they just simply don't know it's out there.
They don't know. And how would they? Because it doesn't have the cultural cachet of a, like, Ty West movie.
No. Exactly. So my final thought on that would be that I would encourage and hope that more people check out this movie, especially given the current climate that American citizens are living in. This has never been more applicable, and it is so fucking funny. I really thought I was going to be super depressed too by it as well, and no, it really hits all the notes it needs to hit, and I want more people to watch this movie. Of all the movies that we've taken chances on, this is one that if you're listening and you haven't seen it, please do fucking see it. When someone that you really respect puts a movie at their number one, you really got to stop and take a second and watch that. And so I really feel like this is a number one choice, and it makes sense to me.
That's a great ethos, because I think because again, if you actually do enjoy that person's worldview and their taste and sensibilities, obviously it's there for a reason. Right? Like you got to be at least a little bit curious.
And if you had put it at like 3 or 4, I might have been like, oh, I guess we don't know. But like to see it at the number one, I was like, the doors stopped, the piano player stopped playing. I was like, whoa!
Yeah, exactly. You ain't from around here, are you? Yeah.
I was like,
exactly.
Must have missing $100 bill taped to the floor level of turn back around.
Right, exactly.
And that's what this movie feels like.
Well said. Well said. Excellent. Oh. Can't put it any more succinctly than that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and then showing me this awesome film.
I'm happy to do it. And again, even happier that you liked it. But it was never.
I don't feel like it was ever a question. All right, guys, and if you're listening to this, there really isn't any question. Especially if you made it this far into the conversation, you should just watch the goddamn movie.
Yeah, I think people get
Mr.
it.
Hackett's trying to get through to you.
Tell Mr. Hackett to go fuck himself.
Welcome to the segment that I mentioned at the top of the show. So if you came here from the very top of the show to check this out, you have made it. This is Corrections, Omissions, and now Deeper Dives. Because we are going to dive very deeply in this episode into some interesting Oscar trivia that I just couldn't help but bring you. So put on your seatbelts, let's do some corrections, omissions, and deeper dives. I want to clarify something about the posthumous Oscar win here for Peter Finch. This was the first acting Oscar to be awarded or won after a person's death. The first ever posthumously nominated actor or actress was Janine Eagles, an American stage and film actress. Eagles appeared in many Broadway productions and in the emerging medium of sound films, as this was the late 1920s. She was posthumously nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress at the second ever Academy Awards in 1929 for her lead role in The Letter. Unfortunately, she died suddenly that year at age 39 due to alcohol addiction and, technically, cirrhosis of the liver. Strangely, James Dean, who died in a car crash in September 1955 at age 24, very famous death, was nominated in 2 consecutive years as an actor for an Oscar, but didn't win either time. One time it was in 1956 for Best Actor for his role in, it was East of Eden. That would be the first time that a male actor was ever posthumously nominated in Oscar history. The award actually went to Ernest Borgnine instead for his performance as the lovelorn working-class butcher from the Bronx in the film adaptation of Delbert Manny's Marty in 1955. I guess that, they didn't want to go with the heartthrob. They wanted to go with the established dramatic actor. The Oscars often make a safer choice. The same thing would happen to James Dean the next year in the 29th Academy Awards. He had been dead for 18 months and then was nominated for his performance as Jet Rink, the farmhand who made it rich in Giant. But he lost out to another titan of acting who could easily audition for a Borgnine role if you were looking for something similar, Yul Brynner in The King and I. Going back to Peter Finch and his win here, it's kind of interesting to note the whole kind of scandal around this. Finch famously was opposed to publicity, but he threw himself into the network award campaign and gave hundreds of interviews. In January 1977, he taped a guest appearance on Johnny Carson's Chat Show and was gearing up for another appearance on the daytime show Good Morning America when he collapsed in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel and never regained consciousness. An autopsy revealed that he had an undiagnosed heart condition. His death came just as that year's Oscar race was heating up. Network's writer Patty Chayefsky reluctantly accepted the award on Finch's behalf, although he then called Finch's widow, Aletha Barrett, to come up on stage, and she was the one who ultimately made the acceptance speech. But, a tragic death doesn't always mean an inevitable Oscar win for actors nowadays. Kind of like with James Dean. Very recently, we probably all remember when Chadwick Boseman received a Best Actor nomination in 2021 for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. That was just 5 months after he had died very tragically at age 43. And everyone expected him to win. When Anthony Hopkins ultimately claimed the prize for his role as a man experiencing dementia in The Father, the shock in the room was palpable. Even Hopkins, who accepted his award in absentia from Wales, he didn't even come because he didn't even think he was going to win, seemed surprised and kind of slightly embarrassed. I mean, he made sure to pay tribute to Boseman in the video acceptance speech, but it kind of felt like he didn't even want to win it. Traditionally, though, posthumous awards have provided the Oscars with some of its most, moving moments. I can remember when Heath Ledger's father, mother, and sister took the stage to accept his statuette in 2019 for his nomination and win as the Joker. That's a good one. But if you want to look at this outside of acting, the first person to ever be nominated after their death is George motherfucking Gershwin. He was nominated for his song, They Can't Take That Away From Me, from the 1937 musical comedy Shall We Dance at the 10th Academy Awards, obviously for Best Original Song. Sadly, he did not win like Janine Eagles, which would make him the first man ever nominated for an Oscar after his death to fail to win it. Sidney Howard, the screenwriter for Gone with the Wind, was the first person ever to win a posthumous Oscar at the 1940 Academy Awards 2 years after Gershwin's nomination. So while Peter Finch is the first actor, Sidney Howard is the first person to ever win after being nominated after death. Howard had a kind of sad, tragic death. He died in 1939 at the age of 48 in Massachusetts. He lived on a 700-acre farm. He really loved rural, quiet life, and he spent as much time as he could on the farm when not in New York City or working in Hollywood. Sadly, he was crushed to death in his garage by his 2.5-ton tractor. He had turned on the ignition switch and was cranking the engine to start it when it lurched forward and pinned him against the wall of the garage. Nice thing came out of that very tragic thing is that shortly after his death, his colleagues at the Playwright Company founded in his honor the Sidney Howard Memorial Award. It consisted of a prize of $1,500 given to a young playwright without notable successes who had shown great promise in a New York production. There were only 4 ever awarded. It was very short-lived, but the 4 that it was awarded to are pretty big. The first one was Robert Ardrey, Thunder Rock. The second one is Tennessee Williams for The Glass Menagerie. Then Garson Kanin for Born Yesterday, and Arthur Lawrence for Home of the Brave. So, some incredibly notable people were given a boost up because of this sad event. As of 2024, 64 individuals have reserved posthumous nominations in competitive categories. 29 individuals have won, including 14 in honorary categories. Again, there's a link I'm going to put in here if you want to take a deep dive and look at all of that. The only other actors to be nominated after their death and not win are Spencer Tracy for Look Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967 and Ralph Richardson for Greystroke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes in 1984. Also, Massimo Troisi for Il Postino in 1995, and that was both for Best Writing and Best Actor, because he wrote that too. Janine Eagles is the only woman ever nominated after death for acting, and no, she didn't win. So no woman has ever won an Oscar nominated after she died. What is the cognitive phenomenon where 2 people come up with the same idea independently of each other on opposite sides of the world? The concept of multiple discovery, also known as simultaneous invention or parallel discovery, is the hypothesis that most scientific discoveries are inventions made independently and more or less simultaneously by multiple scientists and inventors. The concept of multiple discovery opposes a traditional view of the historic theory of invention and discovery, which is the view that the principal authors of inventions and historic discoveries are unique, historic individuals and great scientists, genius men and women. What's up with the international rights on Repo Man that are preventing it from being sequeled? Well, no worries, y'all, because in February of this year, after an extended period of anticipation, director Alex Cox's efforts are finally culminating with the sequel to a cult classic, Repo Man. The 1984 film will be returning with the same director. It will be called Repo Man 2, The Wages of Beer. And while the original movie saw Emilio Estevez playing protagonist Otto Maddox, they're gonna have to replace him because he's too old. It's not set in the future. So Twilight star Kiowa Gordon will take over the role in the sequel. You might know him because in 2009 he played the shapeshifter Embry Call in New Moon, or Jacob's Best Friend. No, not a werewolf. It's a shapeshifter. I looked this up, and I am sad to know all of this information right now, but just do know that those are different things in that fandom. The Wages of Beer, presumably a play on the title of Henri-Georges Clouzot's French thriller The Wages of Fear, will feature, quote, punk energy, existential comedy, and unconventional storytelling, navigating the absurd and chaotic world of Repo Man into a new age of nuclear brinksmanship and driverless cars. The story itself is set after Otto has traveled time and space in his 1967 Chevy Malibu. In this time, he is aged exactly 90 minutes. In 2009, Cox made a narratively unconnected spiritual successor to his debut called Repo Girl, which saw several supporting cast members from the original Repo Man returning. Cox also developed a sequel that was considered a proper sequel in the late 90s, but it never got finalized and it never finished production. The screenplay to that, though, was adapted into a graphic novel called Waldo's Hawaiian Holiday by illustrators Christopher Bones and Justin Randall in 2008, so you can kind of see how that wound up if you want to take a look at it. Part of Cox's issue with maybe getting another film made is that he does not have the best reputation in Hollywood. I think a really famous example of this was that he is cited as having written what would become the script of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and was supposed to direct it. Notably, Martin Scorsese and Oliver Stone attempted to make Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas a film before Alex Cox did, and they just couldn't get it pushed through. But, there was a pressure under studios to eventually just make this film at the time it did get made, and they were like, let's use Alex Cox off of Repo Man. They wanted to do a 4-month shoot. It should just be a really quick thing to do. But Cox was so difficult to get along with that the cast and the crew were constantly fighting, and apparently Cox's script would forego major parts of the book in order to accommodate his vision of the adaptation, including a absolute deal-breaker decision that he wanted animated scenes in multiple parts of it, and that was what caused them to ultimately terminate his contract. They were not going to make that film. Gilliam comes in and says that at the point in which he came in, he doesn't know very much about the fighting before, but the script he was given was interesting, but caused him to reread the original Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which made him realize how little of the original book was actually included in Cox's original script. So he has to sit down with Tony Grisoni and Todd Davies to rewrite the script. They wind up spending 8 fevered days trying to rewrite it, and they look at what they're done and they go, oh god, this is absolute crap. So they spend 2 more days punching it up, and then they felt like they really liked what they had and they filmed it, and that's what we wound up seeing. So, in a roundabout way, saying that Terry Gilliam directed Alex Cox's script is not entirely accurate because the script was so deeply changed. The fact that the script that Cox wanted was so different from Fear and Loathing, causing him to be fired, is interesting. I'm glad that he's going to be able to make this new film, though, that is part of his own vision, and hopefully age has tempered him, and he is not as difficult to work with. I didn't mention the name of the lead actor of Brazil, despite saying a lot of nice things about them and their performance, although I did say that they were unconventionally not attractive. Sorry. Sorry, Jonathan Pryce. I do think you are an amazing actor. And you might also know them from Baron Munchausen, Glengarry Glen Ross. He played Prince Philip in The Crown, and most recently was in Three Body Problem on Netflix. You might also know him as Mr. Dark in Something Wicked This Way Comes. How many other movies have been nominated in the same category for multiple actors in the same film? This wound up being more common than I had thought. I will include a link in the liner notes for the full list if you're curious. For Best Actor, the first multiple nomination was at the 8th Academy Awards in 1935, when 3 people were all nominated for Best Actor. Clark Gable, Charles Laughton, and François Tone, I don't know if I'm saying that name right, in Mutiny on the Bounty. Sadly, none of them won. Victor McLaglen from The Informer did instead. The first multiple actor nomination with a win would come almost a decade later when Bing Crosby and Barry Fitzgerald were both nominated for Going My Way, and Crosby ultimately won. There have been a total of 12 times that this has happened with Best Actor, although the most recent was 40 years ago when F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce were both nominated from Amadeus. F. Murray obviously won. It's only happened 5 times with Best Actress, though. The first being in 1950 with Anne Baxter and Bette Davis in All About Eve. Judy Holliday won for Born Yesterday, though. Of the 5 times that this has happened with Best Actress, only once did it go to any of the actresses. That was in 1983 when both Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger were nominated for Terms of Endearment, and MacLaine won. The most recent time this happened was 33 years ago in 1991 with Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon getting noms for Thelma and Louise. Jodie Foster would actually take the win that year because that's the year of Silence of the Lambs. There have been only 3 times 3 people were nominated from the same film for Best Actor. There has never been a case of 4 or more, or the whole thing was just people from the same movie. Of course, Mutiny on the Bounty in 1935, as I said. And in 1972, with The Godfather, they had James Caan, Robert Duvall, and Al Pacino. Joel Grey won that year for Cabaret. And then again in 1974 for The Godfather Part 2, we have De Niro, Michael Vigazzo, and Lee Strasberg. De Niro won that time. It's only ever happened once for Best Actress, and that was in 1963 for Tom Jones when Diane Cilento, Edith Evans, and Joyce Redman were all nominated. Margaret Rutherford won for The VIPs, though, so no woman has ever won in a more than 2. The most recent time this has happened in all acting categories was in 2022 when Jamie Lee Curtis and Stephanie Hsu were both nominated for Supporting Actress in Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Curtis won. The most recent time this has happened in all of the categories was last year when Barbie had 2 songs nominated for Best Original Song, I'm Just Ken, and What Was I Made For, the latter which won. It's called Neon Genesis Evangelion. Yeah, sorry. I think it literally translates into New City or New Century Evangelion, New Beginning Gospel. I'm not entirely sure. I also know that it is sometimes just called Evangelion or Eva. This is a Japanese mecha anime television show. It's directed by Hideki Anno. It was on broadcast TV on TV Tokyo in 1995 until 1996, so it just had 1 season with 26 episodes. It is set 15 years after a worldwide cataclysm called the Second Impact, particularly in the futuristic fortified city of Tokyo 3. The protagonist is Shinji Ikari, a teenage boy recruited by his father Gendo to the mysterious organization NERV to pilot a giant biomechanical mecha called an Evangelion and fight against beings known as angels. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced any of that. we made fun of this a little bit, and I know Conan likes to make fun of wide-reaching animes. And this has 26 episodes, but 1 season. It does have 6 offshoot films, 5 mangas, and 1 light novel. It's a biggie. Let's at least be honest about that. But I should note, Neon Genesis Evangelion receives a lot of critical acclaim, both domestically in Japan and internationally during the initial broadcast and decades later. Review aggregators for Rotten Tomatoes have the series with a 100% approval rating based on 31 reviews, with an average rating from users as opposed to critics at 8.3 of 10. Their website's critical consensus reads, Neon Genesis Evangelion, both a cultural touchstone for Japan and an uncompromising auteur vision by creator Hideki Anno, doubles as an enthralling apex for the mecha anime genre and as a harrowing exploration of depression, making for a wholly singular epic about angels and inner demons. Paste, ING, and Comic Book Resources have named it as one of the best series in anime of all time. So we'll put a little respect on that name, as the kids say. What is the shortest amount of screen time for any actor or actress who has won an Oscar? Now, this one was a really interesting question and quite the rabbit hole to jump down and into. I'm going to give you the top 9. I know that that's a weird number to give you, but deal with it. And it's going to be 16-minute performances and under, going from 16 minutes to the least, the one that is the shortest time. We're going to start with Anthony Hopkins in 1991 for his performance in Silence of the Lambs. I didn't realize how little of that film he's actually in. Reports kind of vary. Some people say it's like 12 minutes. Some people say it's like 16 minutes. So when calculating this, I just went with the larger number to be safe. Amazing performance. So amazing, again, that I just can't believe it's only 16 minutes or possibly 12, depending on how you look at it. Then there's David Nevin in 1958 in Separate Tables, 15 minutes 38 seconds. He won for his first and only Oscar in this film, Separate Tables, for playing Major Pollock, a war veteran whose hidden past comes to light when several tenants and guests converge on a seaside hotel in the off-season. Then we have Anne Hathaway in Les Miserables in 2012. Only 15 minutes. I didn't realize how little screen time she was actually on. And do consider that this is a 158-minute long film. And she committed herself a lot for this role. She shaved her head and she lost 25 pounds for 15 minutes. Was it worth it? Yeah, because she won an Oscar. Then you have Ingrid Bergman, just an amazing actress all around. Wins for Murder on the Orient Express in 1974. Screen time 14 minutes 18 seconds. She won her one and only Oscar out of 6 nominations, which feels like ridiculous and rude, for Sidney Lumet's adaptation of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Oh, Sidney Lumet again? Like, oh, hey, there's a connotation here. A lot of these very short, winning performances seem to be under his direction, and that says a lot to me about his ability to get an actor to have an amazing performance, because these are different scripts. The only thing that's kind of staying here is him and his amazing touch on a film. Also, worth noting that more than 5 minutes of her brief appearance took place in one single scene. The interrogation one that was shot in one continuous take. Definitely worth your time. Definitely worth checking out. Next is Gloria Graham, and that was for her 1952 The Bad and the Beautiful performance, which was 9 minutes and 32 seconds. This very important performance for this particular list because she was at one time the record holder for Oscar winner with the shortest amount of screen time for like a really, really long time until we get to the number one. It was a Best Supporting Actress for the brief performance she gave as Rosemary, again in The Bad and the Beautiful. She holds it for 25 years. We also have Judi Dench for 1998's Shakespeare in Love. That was an 8-minute performance for which she gets a Best Supporting Actress. She was playing Queen Elizabeth I, Dench acknowledged the brevity of her role, in fact, while accepting the award, jokingly saying, quote, "I feel for 8 minutes on the screen, I should only get a little bit of him." Fun fact, that same year, Cate Blanchett was nominated for Best Actress for playing the same character in Elizabeth. Blanchett lost the award to Dench's Shakespeare in Love co-star Gwyneth Paltrow, but that's one of the few times in Oscar history that two different actresses were nominated for playing the same character in different films in the same year. Also, we've got Anthony Quinn for his 1956 Lust for Life performance, just 8 minutes as well, so I guess this kind of ties with Dench. Though it's Kirk Douglas who got top billing for this, Lust for Life is a Vincent van Gogh biopic. It's Anthony Quinn who stole the screen because he won the 1957 Best Supporting Actor for just those 8 minutes in which he plays Gauguin. Also worth noting, and the only one I'm going to throw on this is so it's like 8 wins and 9 I'm saying, because one of them is a nom, but I need to talk about it because it's Ned Beatty, which is another Sidney Lumet. This is also from Network. We talked about this in here, but I just want to include this in the list because that is 5 minutes and 53 seconds. So the only other win before we get to the next one, which is going to be the shortest one ever, was 8 minutes. So we go from 8 minutes to 5 minutes 40 seconds. That's 13 seconds less screen time than Ned Beatty had. It's Beatrice Straight, Network. Network, among all of the Oscar wins, among the posthumous win for Peter Finch, it also has another interesting as hell Oscar trivia win, which is that Beatrice Straight still to this day holds the record for shortest amount of screen time for an Oscar win at 5 minutes 40 seconds. Worth noting, Hermione Baddeley, Baddele, was nominated in 1959 for Room at the Top. She didn't win, but if she had, her screen time would have been 2 minutes, 20 seconds, completely crushing any other winner. It was a Best Supporting Actress nod. It's just amazing that someone could be on screen for 2 minutes and even make it to a nomination. I've never seen that film, but I'm certainly going to have to check it out now. I said it was the last fuckable year. This skit is actually called Last Fuckable Day. I have included a link to the full sketch on YouTube in the liner notes. I also misspoke when I said that Disney's Black Hole was in 1976, and pretty much seconds later I realized I didn't actually say 79, but I didn't want to mess up the flow of conversation, so I figured I'd fix it here. And that's it. I want to say that's all the corrections, omissions, and deep dives, but this is like 30 minutes of stuff so far, so that is what we have for this episode.
Does she love you, Max?
I'm not sure she's capable of any real feelings. She's television generation. She learned life from Bugs Bunny.
Well, we did it. We cracked 3 hours. That's the first time that any of these episodes has been over 3 hours. The second longest episode up to this is 2 hours and 45 minutes. And would you be surprised to know that that is Moonstruck with Conan? We pick good movies and we spend a lot of time because there's a lot to talk about. I'm not going to say anything more except thanks for making it all the way to the end. We'll be back on the 1st with an episode all about Christmas and the anti-Christmas film Jingle All the Way with a friend of mine that I've met on TikTok, another film talker, Brandon White. It's really going to be a fun conversation. I'm not the biggest stan of Jingle All the Way, but I am loving the idea of finding things to love about stuff even that I don't typically stan all the time, or I don't typically fan all the time. Again, I'll be on Letterhack. That's today. I will be on Letterhack tonight, the 15th at 9:30 p.m. Come check us out. It should be a wonderful time. Catch me on the 2nd on Movie Night Extravaganza. I'm done talking. This has been What If I Don't Like It with your host, Katie Baldessaro. See you later, Space Cowboy.